Chapter 233. Heaven Luo City, a secret place. Damn it. The Heaven Luo City actually wants to hold the Dragon Blood Martial meet, and even used half of the Heaven Luo Mountain's Dragon Bloodstones as the martial meet's reward. How cunning! Emoshi smashed the stone table in front of him with his palm, causing rocks to fly everywhere. His young and tender face revealed a sinister expression. He did not expect that the moment he asked Feng Lianqing to release the news of the Dragon Bloodstone, the news of the Heaven Luo City holding the Dragon Blood martial meet would actually spread. In this way, his plan to stir up a bloody storm in Heaven Luo City was foiled. Right now, most of the martial artists were thinking about how to participate in the Dragon Blood martial meet, and how to win in the martial meet. Who would think of snatching the Dragon Bloodstone? It had to be said, this move of the Dragon Blood martial group was indeed brilliant. Putting the originally bloody competition on the surface, even those great powers and sects would definitely be planning to send people to participate in the Dragon Blood martial gathering, and not how to snatch the Dragon Blood stones. Since they could obtain the Dragon Blood stone with their own strength, who would bother to fight for it? Master, Heaven Luo City's move is too cunning. Now that everyone was here for the Dragon Blood martial meet, there was no one who really wanted to snatch the Dragon Bloodstone. It's almost impossible to cause chaos in Heaven Luo City. Beside Mo Shi, Mr. Z's delicate body was trembling, and her exquisite face was equally gloomy. On the other hand, Feng Lianqing had a calm expression, and the corners of his mouth would curl up from time to time. The Dragon Blood martial meet was bad news for Mo Shi and Mr. Z, but it was not necessarily bad news for the Fengqin Empire. Since the Dragon Blood martial meet was open to any martial artist below the age of 30, then the martial artists of the Fengqin Empire could also register. The Heaven Luo City's Dragon Blood martial meet's publicity board clearly stated that the top 50 of the martial meet would be able to obtain the Dragon Blood stone as a reward, while the top 100 would be able to obtain other valuable reward. The Qin Empire was not a top power, but it was not difficult to find a martial artist who could fight his way into the top 50 of the martial competition. This way, the Fengqin Empire could also get a small piece of the cake. Of course, Feng Lianqing was very happy. Of course, Aoki Lily had taken into account the various forces of the South Mountain region. Hence, she had decided that the top 50 winners would receive the Dragon Bloodstone as a reward. Nie Tian took out 10% of the Dragon Bloodstones, while the Yuan Chamber of Commerce and Gu Yi each took out 20%. In total, it was half of the Dragon Bloodstones. This reward was indeed generous enough. This would guarantee that the various forces would be able to obtain some Dragon Bloodstones. As for those forces that could not obtain Dragon Bloodstones, they could only blame themselves for being too weak. From this, it could be seen that Aoki Lily's way of doing things was even more meticulous than Ding Yifun's. Z. Mo Shi abruptly stood up. Master, Mr. Purple bowed respectfully in response. Mo Shi laughed coldly and said, "Isn't the Heaven Luo City going to hold the Dragon Blood martial meet? Then I will turn the Dragon Blood martial group into a martial group of slaughter." Master, what you mean is... Lady Purple's brows wrinkled slightly, and she was a bit confused. I want you to personally participate in the Dragon Blood martial meet and kill every opponent you meet. A gloomy look flashed across Mo Ten's immature face as he transmitted his voice to Mr. Purple. Yes. Mr. Z was slightly taken aback, but immediately understood. She could not help but chuckle, revealing a seductive look. Mr. Z's current strength was at the first level of true essence. This strength was not considered strong in the entire Nanshan region. But among the younger generation of martial artists in the Nanshan region, he could at least be ranked in the top 3. Perhaps even the number 1 genius of the Nanshan region's genius list would not be able to easily win against Mr. Z. Moreover, there were still 2 months until the Dragon Blood martial meet. Mr. Z was confident that she could increase her strength again within these 2 months. At that time, she could be said to have no fear of any opponent in the dragon blood martial meet. As long as she took the lead in killing her opponents, the other martial artists would definitely follow suit. At that time, the dragon blood martial meet would become a martial group of slaughter. Feng Lianqing did not know what Mo Shi and Mr. Z were talking about, but from their expressions, he could infer that it was definitely not something good. Feng Lianqing faintly felt a chill. His gaze swept across Mo Shi and Mr. Z, and his face immediately revealed a deep fear. Feng Lianqing, you said that someone wants to see Z. Is that person here now? Suddenly, Mo Shi thought of something and asked. He's here. Feng Lianqing hurriedly bowed and said, God Transformation Sex Azure Dragon Hall Master Xiefeng is already waiting for Mr. Z in Snow Blowing City. Good. Mo Shi nodded lightly and said, let's return to Snow Blowing City first and meet this God Transformation Sex Hall Master. Snow Blowing City, a border city of the Feng Qin Empire, was not far from Tianluo City. A few days ago, Feng Lianqing said that a big shot from the God Transformation sect wanted to see Mr. Z and asked her to treat him. Originally, Mo Shi and Mr. Z had no interest in this matter, but when Mo Shi found out that the God Transformation sect was a top force in the Nanshan region, he decided to let Mr. Z meet this God Transformation sect's Hall Master, Xiefeng. In Mo Shi's view, perhaps the God Transformation sect was a force that dared to offend the red-clothed elder of the Alchemist Association. Before he grew up, it would be beneficial to have a good relationship with the God Transformation sect. The three walked out of the secret place, and their figures quickly disappeared. 3 days later, Tianluo City, City Lord Office's martial arena. Everyone in the City Lord Office watched from afar. On the martial arena, 2 figures were fighting fiercely. It was actually Nie Tian and Qiu Shan. Of course, the two were just sparring. Qiu Shan, don't worry and attack. Just don't use your giant spirit true body, Nie Tian shouted with a faint smile when he saw Qiu Shan's hesitation. Nie Tian had just trained hard for 3 days, and his current strength was already at the 3rd tier of the all-creation realm. He had the primal chaos original coffin. 3 days of training was equivalent to a month of closed-door training for other martial artists. Moreover, the 9 extremes war god art that he cultivated was a super heaven-class technique, so his cultivation speed was far faster than ordinary people. In 3 days, Nie Tian's strength had not only increased by 1 tier, but the power of the stars in his body had also awakened to 4,096 stars. However, his mental energy did not increase, remaining at level 43. Nie Tian's greatest improvement wasn't his strength, but his cultivation of the 9 extremes war god art. He had already reached the 2nd tier of the 9 extremes war god art, the extreme wood jade heaven realm. The 9 extremes war god art had a total of 9 tiers. Before this, Nie Tian had been stuck at the 1st tier, the extreme gold yellow heaven realm. Just yesterday, his strength had risen to the 3rd tier of the all-creation realm, and the 9 extremes war god art had only reached the 2nd tier, the extreme wood jade heaven realm. In his previous life, even at his peak, Nie Tian had only cultivated the 9 extremes war god art to the 5th tier, the extreme earth mysterious heaven realm. In this life, Nie Tian would definitely cultivate the 9 extremes war god art to the highest 9th tier, the extreme dark heaven realm. As long as he could cultivate to the 9th tier, the extreme dark heaven realm, he would be able to condense the 9 extremes war god armor. With that defensive power, even a peak heavenly emperor would not be able to damage it in the slightest. The increase in the tier of the 9 extremes war god art caused Nie Tian's battle prowess to rise greatly. Therefore, he sparred with Qiu Shan to verify his current battle prowess. Alright. Be careful, mister. Qiu Shan laughed and shouted, Wild world-defying blade art, dark desert moon. Chapter 234. At this time, Qiu Shan was already at the giant spirit layer 5, which was a whole realm higher than Nie Tian. Furthermore, he had cultivated the complete world-defying wild blade technique, so even if he did not use the giant spirit body, the power of his blade was still extremely terrifying, comparable to an ordinary giant spirit realm level attack. The saber power of the Saber Heart Saber Master is indeed terrifying. In the face of the power of Qiu Shan's blade, Nie Tian sighed in his heart, but did not panic on his face. The 10 yuan meridians in his body madly revolved, yuan power surging to the limit. Nie Tian's body lit up with a layer of green light, and one could vaguely see that it was a green armor. This was the Extreme Wood Jade Heaven Battle Armor condensed by the second stage of the 9 Extremes War God Art, the Extreme Wood Jade Heaven Territory. It was much stronger than the first stage's Extreme Gold Yellow Heaven Battle Armor. Battle God Heavenly Slash. The instant the Extreme Wood Jade Sky Battle Armor appeared, Nie Tian thrust out his Absolute Heaven Slash. A 10-meter-long sword shadow soared into the sky like a flood dragon breaking out of the abyss. As Nie Tian's strength rose, the astral energy in his body grew even more intense. Hence, the power contained within his astral soul sword qi grew even more terrifying. Such a sharp sword qi. Tong Fu, who was watching from the side, couldn't help but be surprised when he sensed the violent sword aura contained in Nie Tian's sword technique. Because Adele was by Nie Tian's side, Tong Fu also moved to the city lord's mansion. Gu Yi did not object to this. He was also a little worried about Nie Tian's safety, and with Tong Fu by Nie Tian's side, he would have an additional safeguard. Boss's sword qi is much more powerful than it was in Blue Cloud City. I estimate that it won't be long before he can develop a sword heart. This increase in strength is 2F** King fast. The Fiend God Blood Codex in Jean de Bao's body could sense the sharpness of the proud sword qi and astral soul sword qi, and it couldn't help but speak. Jean de Bao remembered that Nie Tian had condensed his sword qi in Blue Cloud City, which had been more than a month since then. But now, Nie Tian's sword qi was abundant and surging. It was obvious that he was going to nurture his sword heart. Nurturing the heart of the sword in a little more than a month, such speed, such talent in sword Dao, if other swordsmen were to find out, those people would definitely have the heart to find a piece of tofu and kill themselves. An ordinary swordsman who could condense sword qi before the age of 20 and nurture sword heart before the age of 30 would already be considered a decent sword Dao genius. From sword qi to sword heart, an ordinary swordsman would need dozens of years. A talented swordsman would need 10 years, and a talented swordsman would need several years. However, Nie Tian only used a little more than a month to cultivate the sword heart. This was too monstrous, and it was simply outrageous. Of course, Nie Tian also felt that he was about to cultivate a sword heart, but he didn't expect that he would cultivate a sword heart so quickly. In his previous life, it took Nie Tian 3 years to advance from the sword qi stage to the sword heart stage. In this life, it seemed that he only needed a little more than a month to nurture the sword heart. Apart from Nie Tian's own comprehension of the sword principle, the chaotic original coffin also played a crucial role in achieving such an abnormal speed. Coupled with the power of the Star Origin Stone, it was understandable that he could achieve such a speed. Boom! At this moment, in the arena, Qiu Shan's Ashen Desert and Nie Tian's War God Heavenly Slash collided. A terrifying explosion sounded, and soon after, a wave of air surged out. Nie Tian felt the pressure of the rolling wave of air, and he couldn't help but take a few steps back. Although he was a bit embarrassed, he wasn't injured at all. On the other hand, Qiu Shan was like an old tree, not moving at all. With only this move, the difference in strength between the two was revealed. Qiu Shan had the upper hand in this move, but there was no expression on his face. Instead, he was shocked. He didn't hold back much of his strength in that move. He didn't expect that Nie Tian would be able to take it and come out unscathed. Even the wood blue sky armor on his body wasn't damaged. This kind of strength was too exaggerated. If it wasn't for the fact that he had a certain understanding of Nie Tian, Qiu Shan would definitely think that he had encountered a ghost. One should know that Nie Tian only had the strength of a Wanxiang 3rd tier, while Qiu Shan had the strength of a giant spirit 5th tier. Moreover, Qiu Shan knew that he had cultivated the complete wild world-defying saber art. His current strength was almost twice as powerful as it was several days ago. Even under these circumstances, Nie Tian was still able to withstand his attack. It was really inconceivable. Qiu Shan felt that it was inconceivable. Nie Tian was very dissatisfied with his own strength. He knew that although Qiu Shan didn't hold back in that move just now, he didn't use the giant spirit true body after all. The greatest reliance of a giant spirit realm martial artist was naturally the giant spirit true body. If Qiu Shan used the giant spirit true body, the power of that move, Azure Moon Desert, would at least increase several times. If that was the case, Nie Tian wouldn't be able to withstand it at all. Nie Tian's opponent was Qiu Shan. If it were any other giant spirit martial artist, would they give up the giant spirit true body to fight him? Obviously not. Therefore, Nie Tian still felt that his strength was too weak and that he still had to continue to improve. Again. At this time, Nie Tian laughed and shouted, "Use your more powerful move. I want to see if you can break through my extreme wood blue sky armor." Qiu Shan's move just now didn't break Nie Tian's extreme wood blue sky armor, so Nie Tian wanted to test the limits of the armor's defense. "All right." Qiu Shan agreed and shouted, "Desert Blade has no edge, Blade Mark has no path." The Desert Blade has no edge directly chopped down, and a copious amount of blade energy shot out like an arrow from a bow. Sword 17. Smiling faintly, Nie Tian's absolute heaven beheader spun in the air, forming a perfect flowing light sword shield. Bang! The blade energy struck the sword shield and sparks flew. The sword shield shattered with a bang. The ferocious blade energy bombarded the extreme wood blue sky armor in the next instant. Green light flashed on Nie Tian's body, and he was immediately pushed back several steps by the shockwave. When Nie Tian steadied himself, the extreme wood blue sky armor didn't disappear, and he forcefully withstood Qiu Shan's powerful attack. What a strong defense! Qiu Shan couldn't help but exclaim when he saw that Nie Tian was fine. Although Qiu Shan didn't use his giant spirit true body just now, with his 5th level giant spirit strength and the boost from his saber heart, his all-out attack wasn't any weaker than an ordinary 1st level giant spirit warrior's giant spirit true body. In fact, it was quite a bit stronger. From this, it could be inferred that the seemingly careless green light armor on Nie Tian's body was enough to withstand a giant spirit attack from a 1st level giant spirit warrior. If Qiu Shan hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never have believed it. Nie Tian smiled faintly and patted the dust off his body. He was quite satisfied with the defensive power of the extreme wood blue sky armor. With the extreme wood blue sky armor, even if Nie Tian couldn't kill a giant spirit realm warrior, he could easily deal with them and not be killed. Moreover, Nie Tian also had Star Souls as a killing move, so his battle strength was already no weaker than a giant spirit realm warrior. More importantly, after cultivating the 9 War God art to the 2nd level, Nie Tian's recovery ability had also improved qualitatively. He could even recover his origin energy and blood chi during battle. Let's go, we'll take a look around the city and see how the registration for the Dragon Blood Martial Meet is going. At the same time, we'll see how much Gao Han has collected. Nie Tian put away the absolute heaven/sword and smiled faintly, preparing to go to Heaven Luo City to take a look. "Boss!" Jean de Bao chuckled and came over. His small eyes rolled as he asked, "How much did you ask Gao Han to collect to register for the Dragon Blood Martial Meet?" Nie Tian smiled faintly and raised a finger. "A piece of low-grade origin crystal." Jean de Bao was suddenly taken aback and immediately shouted, "Boss, you're too black-hearted. De Bao, you underestimate your boss too much." Nie Tian shook his head with a smile and said, It's a piece of high-grade origin crystal. Chapter 235. One high-grade essence crystal. Jean de Bayo was stunned on the spot and only reacted after a long time. He cried out, F***ck me. Boss, you're simply blackmailing the essence soul. Low-grade essence crystals are Heaven Luo City's entrance fee, brother. Nie Tian chuckled and ignored Jean de Bayo's astonishment. He had already walked far away. Back then, he proposed to hold the Dragon Blood Martial meeting in Heaven Luo City in order to take advantage of this golden opportunity to earn a huge sum. During the auction previously, it made Nie Tian realize that although he did not fancy essence crystals, the more the better. Sometimes it could solve many problems. For the Dragon Blood Martial meeting this time, not only did Nie Tian set the registration fee to one high-grade essence crystal, even the entrance fee to Heaven Luo City was low-grade essence crystals. One high-grade essence crystal, that was a full 100 low-grade essence crystals, which was 1 million gold coins when converted to gold coins. 10,000 gold coins entrance fee, plus 1 million gold coins registration fee. This was indeed a little ruthless. However, these martial artists who came to Heaven Luo City did not have good intentions in the first place. They all came for the dragon blood stones. If he did not ruthlessly rip them off, Nie Tian would not be able to live with his conscience. The Dragon Blood Martial meeting had shocked the entire South Mountain region. Currently, there were no less than a few 100,000 martial artists coming and going from Heaven Luo City in a single day. Just these people alone, Nie Tian's income in a single day was a few 100,000 low-grade origin crystals. In addition, there were thousands of people signing up every day. Nie Tian was simply counting money until his hands cramped. Earning hundreds of thousands of low-grade essence crystals every day, this number was indeed very terrifying. After a while, Nie Tian and the rest arrived at the Heaven Luo City's Dragon Blood Martial Meeting registration site. The registration site was exceptionally bustling. It was a sea of people, bustling with noise. Holy **T. So many people. Jean de Bayo saw countless heads in front of him and thought about how Nie Tian even increased the entrance fee. Immediately, his flat face swelled with excitement. He said in astonishment, "How much is this freaking fee?" Jean de Bayo counted with his fingers for a long time, but he still couldn't figure out anything. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "What's there to calculate? Just ask Gao Han and you'll know." Yes, I have to go and ask." Jean de Bayo came to his senses and chuckled. He shook his huge body and squeezed through the crowd. Nie Tian and the rest followed behind Jean de Bayo. With a big fatty leading the way, they felt much more relaxed. Jean de Bayo spent a tremendous amount of effort to squeeze his way to the registration area. He saw Gao Han smiling from ear to ear as he received the shiny white crystals. Beside Gao Han were boxes and boxes of essence crystals placed, looking extremely tempting. "Commander Gao, how many origin crystals have we collected today?" Jean de Bayo squeezed his way forward and asked impatiently. Gao Han naturally recognized Jean de Bayo. He chuckled and said, "Young Master Jean, the registration fee for today was over 3,000 high-grade origin crystals, and the brothers at the city gate received over 300,000 low-grade origin crystals as entrance fee. In total, it's 700,000 low-grade origin crystals. 700,000. Jean de Bayo exaggeratedly opened his mouth wide, and could not close it for a long time. Gao Han nodded and smiled, then said, "It's a lot less than yesterday, but it's still not bad." Less than yesterday. Still not bad. Jean de Bayo was completely frozen. Damn, this was the rhythm of being drowned by the origin crystals. At this time, Nie Tian walked over, and Gao Han respectfully bowed. Gao Han now admired Nie Tian to the point of prostrating himself on all fours. The previous city lord, Lan Yunjiang, only knew how to plunder the wealth of the citizens. In the end, the things he plundered were all swallowed by Nie Tian. And Nie Tian? He directly took money from the entire South Mountain region's martial artists. If this trend continued, before the Dragon Blood martial meeting started, Nie Tian would have earned back all the Dragon Blood stones he lost. Actually, Nie Tian did not expect the Dragon Blood martial meeting to be so popular. It seemed that in the days before the martial meeting, there was a need to increase the entrance fee and registration fee. At this time, there was a commotion not far away. You want to rip me off? Trash like you aren't qualified yet. I, Lei Sanhu, have entered the Sanguine Massacre grounds and entered the Demon King's ancient tomb. This time, participating in the Dragon Blood martial meeting, I must obtain the Dragon Blood stones. If you want to collect my registration fee, why don't you take a piss and look at yourself? Who do you think you are? A thunderous voice roared crazily, attracting the attention of the surrounding people. What's going on? Nie Tian's gaze slightly sunk as he looked at Gao Han. City Lord, don't panic, I'll go take a look. Gao Han smiled indifferently and shouted, everyone move aside, this commander wants to see who dares to cause trouble in Heaven Luo City. The crowd automatically parted, and Gao Han walked over. He saw a burly man with a scar on his face punching a Heaven Luo City guard. The guard screamed in pain and fell to the ground, unable to get up again. Maniac, you sure have guts. The Dragon Blood martial meeting has its own rules. If you want to register, you have to pay the registration fee. Gao Han walked over and shouted, I'll pay your grandmother. Just as Gao Han finished speaking, Lei Sanhu threw a punch over. Suddenly, a huge phantom of a tiger head appeared in the air, and a tiger's roar resounded. Gao Han reacted quickly and threw a punch over as well. Bang! The two fists collided, but it was like metal colliding with stone. After a muffled sound, Gao Han was immediately sent flying and fell beside Nie Tian's feet. City Lord. Gao Han spat out a mouthful of blood and raised his head to look at Nie Tian. His face couldn't help but turn red. Are you okay? Nie Tian threw a spirit pill to Gao Han and asked. Gao Han swallowed the spirit pill and quickly got up. He lowered his head and said, This subordinate is fine. The dignified Heaven Luo City Guard commander was sent flying with one punch. It was truly embarrassing. Nie Tian nodded and said, He is a giant spirit realm martial artist, you are not his opponent. Giant spirit realm martial artist. Gao Han sucked in a breath of cold air and couldn't help but glance at Lei Sanhu. A trace of fear flashed through his eyes. He never thought that this ordinary-looking guy would actually be a giant spirit realm martial artist. Gao Han was only at Wanxiang Realm 9th level, so he was naturally not Lei Sanhu's opponent. You're courting death. At this time, Qiushan, who was beside Nie Tian, stepped forward, wanting to personally take action. Wait, Nie Tian waved his hand to stop Qiushan and said with a faint smile, I will handle this matter. At this time, Qiushan and Tong Fu were both present. If either of them were to take action, they would be able to deal with Lei Sanhu. However, Nie Tian was a little interested in this simple-minded guy in front of him. Perhaps he could take him in as a guard in Heaven Luo City. There were too many people in Heaven Luo City now, and the previous guards obviously couldn't handle the situation. Although this Lei Sanhu in front of him was a little silly, his strength wasn't just for show. He was at Giant Spirit Realm 4th level, no wonder he boasted that he would definitely win the Dragon Blood martial meeting. However, with his strength, he might be able to fight his way into the top 50 of the martial meeting. If he wanted to become the martial meetings champion, that would be wishful thinking. Nie Tian walked forward and couldn't help but laugh when he saw this carefree, burly man with a scar on his face. The burly man in front of him was 2 meters tall, and the funniest thing was that he had 3 small braids on his head. It was very comical. Nie Tian chuckled and asked, You're called Lei Sanhu? Chapter 236. Lei Sanhu sensed that Nie Tian was only at the 3rd tier of the Wanxiang realm, and he looked amiable, so he didn't take him seriously at all. What kind of threat could a teenage boy pose? Nie Tian shook his head slightly. his expression still amiable. I'm not a plaything. My name is Nietian. I just want to tell you that the Dragonblood Martial Gathering has its rules. If you want to sign up, you must pay the registration fee. I think that a piece of high-grade origin crystal is nothing to a super expert like you, right? Qiu Shan, Tong Fu, and the others all frowned in confusion. They didn't know why Nietian was so polite to this guy. I have yuan crystals, why should I give them to you? Lei Sanhu became even more arrogant when he saw Nietian's amiable expression. He roared, "Kid, you'd better get the hell out of here, or I'll kill you with one slap." Kill me with one slap? Nietian frowned and smiled, speechless. It had to be said that it was damn hard to reason with people these days. My fist is bigger, and my words are the most important rule. Lei Sanhu thought Nietian was scared when he saw him frown and smile, so he became even more arrogant. He pointed at Gao Han behind Nietian and said, "I don't care what rules your Dragonblood Martial Gathering has. He's an example of not listening to me." Haha, Nietian couldn't help but laugh. He frowned and said, "I don't think you know who I am? I don't care who you are." Lei Sanhu was obviously angry. He pointed at Nietian and roared, "If you don't get the hell out of here, I'll kill you with one punch." Nietian couldn't help but let out a long sigh when he saw Lei Sanhu's insolent and irascible appearance. It was too damn difficult to communicate with this guy. It was obvious that this guy was a person with low intelligence who liked to provoke others. Being all brawn and no brains was made for people like Lei Sanhu. Nietian thought for a moment, then said, "I am the city lord of Heaven Luo City. The guard you just injured is my subordinate. Since you injured him, you have to pay the price. Tell me, how do you want to compensate me?" "I'll compensate you with a fart." Lei Sanhu let out a furious roar, completely enraged. He threw a punch at Nietian, causing a deafening roar to echo through the air. The phantom of the tiger head appeared once again, attacking Nietian. War Divine Emperor Fist. Nietian's eyebrows furrowed slightly. He had long since anticipated that Lei Sanhu would make a move. Therefore, instead of dodging, he threw out a punch without any fancy move. Wherever his fist landed, a golden fist shadow whizzed out. Bang! The tiger head projection collided with the Divine War Emperor Fist, causing a burst of flames to erupt. Whoosh! Thud! Boom! Lei Sanhu took 3 steps back before he could stabilize his body after he felt the powerful impact. On the other hand, Nietian didn't move at all. This scene caused everyone present to be petrified. No one had expected that not only would Nietian, who was merely at the 3rd tier of the All Creations realm, be uninjured by Lei Sanhu's punch, but he even had the upper hand. Many people rubbed their eyes furiously to make sure they weren't seeing things. Lei Sanhu was even more shocked. He looked at his own fist in a daze, then pinched his thigh fiercely. Ouch! He finally confirmed that he wasn't dreaming. "Let's go again, kid." Lei Sanhu was enraged that he was forced to retreat by a 3rd-tier All Creations martial artist in front of everyone. The muscles on his face trembled as he growled in a low voice, "I don't believe I can't beat a kid like you." Lei Sanhu had no idea that he wouldn't be a match for Nietian if he didn't use his Titan true form. Nietian had awakened the power of 4,096 stars in his body. Even without using any martial techniques, he could still exert a force of 1,000,000 Jin. Although Lei Sanhu was at the 4th tier of the Giant Spirit True Body, he was still weaker than Nietian in terms of pure strength without using his Giant Spirit True Body. In that exchange just now, Nietian had the advantage in terms of strength. Nietian saw that Lei Sanhu's fighting spirit was very strong, but he smiled and said, "Lei Sanhu, I don't have time to play with you. If you want to continue fighting with me, you have to agree to a condition of mine." "What condition? Speak." Lei Sanhu roared angrily. "Now that's the way." Nietian smiled in his heart and said, "Let's make a bet. 1 move to determine the winner." If I lose, you don't have to pay the Dragon Blood Martial Meat registration fee. But if you lose, you'll stay in Heaven Luo City as a guard. How about it? When Nie Tian's words came out, everyone looked at him with strange gazes. This bet was too ridiculous. If Lei Sanhu won, he would pay less of the martial meat registration fee, a piece of high-grade essence crystal. But if Nie Tian won, he would directly obtain a 4th-tier giant spirit bodyguard. Furthermore, it was not even for a long time. That would be a lifetime. The wagers of both parties were worlds apart. If this bet was placed on anyone else, no one would bet on it. But Lei Sanhu was different. This guy was clearly a fool. When Jean de Bao heard Nie Tian's words, he could not help but say in his heart, "Boss is too much of a bully. You can't play it like this." But Nie Tian had a calm look. That expression seemed to be saying, "Who asked me to crush him with my IQ? Fine. I'll bet with you." Sure enough, Lei Sanhu did not disappoint Nie Tian. With a roar, he agreed very straightforwardly. Nie Tian smiled slyly and suddenly said, "Lei Sanhu, we have to make things clear first. You're not allowed to use the giant spirit avatar." When Jean de Bao heard what Nie Tian said, he was completely stupefied. He cried out in his heart, "Boss, you're too much. This is too shameless." Jean de Bao had just watched the battle between Nie Tian and Qiu Shan. Without using the giant spirit avatar, even Qiu Shan was unable to defeat Nie Tian, let alone this fool in front of him. Once Nie Tian said this, he was basically in an invincible position. Lei Sanhu was not too stupid. He immediately hesitated. When his fist collided with Nie Tian just now, he already knew that the strength of this little kid in front of him, who was only at the 3rd stage of the all-creation realm, was very strange. Without using the giant spirit avatar, it would be hard to say if Lei Sanhu could win. Seeing that Lei Sanhu was hesitating, Nie Tian turned around and looked at Jean de Bao. Jean de Bao immediately understood what Nie Tian meant. He curled his lips, then with a look of reluctance, he took a step forward and said in a loud voice, "Lei Sanhu, you're at the 4th stage of the giant spirit avatar realm, but Nie Tian City Lord is only at the 3rd stage of the all-creation realm. If you use the giant spirit avatar, you're too much of a bully." That's right. Gao Han, who was at the side, immediately understood. He said loudly, "A 4th stage of the giant spirit avatar, and he still wants to use the giant spirit avatar? Don't tell me he's afraid of Nie Tian City Lord? What a coward! If he's afraid, then hurry up and pay the registration fee. Don't waste everyone's time." The other guards were not stupid either, and they all chimed in. Motherf ****. Lei Sanhu's face turned red from everyone's words. His muscles began to tremble. He clenched his teeth and roared, "If he doesn't want to use the giant spirit avatar, then don't. I'm a great giant spirit avatar martial artist. Why would I be afraid of a little kid?" His thunderous voice sounded like a joke in Nie Tian's ears. He couldn't help but raise the corner of his mouth as he thought, "Lei Sanhu, you're definitely going to be my guard." Chapter 237. Lei Sanhu's roar was like a clap of thunder. More importantly, was a mighty spirit realm cultivator still a mighty spirit realm cultivator without using his mighty spirit true body? The answer was no. At least not in Nie Tian's eyes. As long as Lei Sanhu didn't use his mighty spirit true body, Nie Tian was confident he could defeat him. If Qiu Shan couldn't break through Nie Tian's extreme wood blue sky armor without using his mighty spirit true body, then Lei Sanhu definitely wouldn't stand a chance. In that sense, Nie Tian was already in an invincible position. "Everyone, get out of the way!" Lei Sanhu roared, his yuan meridians operating to the limit. His yuan energy surged wildly like a broken dam. A faint layer of golden light gradually appeared around Lei Sanhu's body, forming the silhouette of a ferocious tiger that shrouded him. Sensing his powerful aura, the crowd retreated in fear of being injured. Nie Tian glanced at Lei Sanhu and smiled faintly. You're actually activating your defense first. You're not that stupid, are you? He wanted to know if Lei Sanhu's defense was stronger, or if his extreme wood blue sky armor was stronger. Qiu Shan, Tong Fu, and the rest watched Nie Tian with rapt attention. Although they were confident in Nie Tian's strength, they couldn't help but feel worried. After all, Lei Sanhu was a 4th-level mighty spirit realm cultivator. Tiger roar, mountains and rivers move. Lei Sanhu might be a simple-minded person, but he was a shrewd fighter. With a roar, he made the first move, clearly trying to seize the initiative. Bang! Lei Sanhu stomped hard on the ground, causing the boulders on the ground to crack and fly into the air. In the next moment, Lei Sanhu's enormous body shot forward like an arrow released from a bow. Roar! At the same time, an earth-shattering tiger roar resounded. The silhouette of a ferocious tiger leaped out and pounced at Nie Tian. The thunderous aura forced the onlookers to retreat like a strong gale. 9 levels of War God, Scarlet Wind Dragon Slash. In the face of Lei Sanhu's powerful attack, Nie Tian didn't even frown. The absolute heaven slash appeared in his hand as he raised his arm and stabbed forward. It was a simple and unadorned movement, but there was a heart-palpitating aura that whistled out. Immediately after, the sword Absolute Heaven Slash shone brightly, and the enormous sword chi condensed into the phantom of a dragon's head that was several meters long. Roar! The dragon's shadow shook the heavens as it whizzed out. Its enormous aura caused the surrounding crowd to turn pale. Purring! They collided with a loud bang. The dragon and the tiger were fighting, but the superiority was clear. Even though Lei Sanhu's tiger roar was powerful and domineering, it was still not as sharp as the Scarlet Wind Dragon Slash. Roar! The illusory dragon head let out another deafening dragon roar and immediately attacked Lei Sanhu. Bang! A muffled sound rang out as Lei Sanhu was sent flying. When he landed on the ground, he staggered a few steps back and nearly fell to the ground. Woo! Lei Sanhu felt the blood in his chest churn, and he felt incredibly stifled. A mouthful of blood actually gushed out of his throat, but he kept his mouth shut and swallowed it back down with a gulp. A mighty 4th-level spirit warrior had been beaten to the point of vomiting blood by a 3rd-level Wanxiang cultivator. Lei Sanhu couldn't afford to lose face like this. However, Nie Tian had already noticed Lei Sanhu's little movements. He didn't point it out and merely smiled faintly, saying, "Lei Sanhu, you've lost." Lei Sanhu had lost. It wasn't until Nie Tian's voice rang out that the crowd finally reacted. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, who would believe that a 3rd-level Wanxiang cultivator had defeated a 4th-level spirit warrior? Of course, although this 4th-level spirit warrior wasn't all that smart, his strength was the real deal. Even if Lei Sanhu hadn't used his giant spirit true body, the power of his punch just now was no small matter. There were also 1st-level spirit warriors present. They speculated that if Lei Sanhu's punch had landed on their bodies, they probably wouldn't have been able to take it. On the surface, it seemed like Nie Tian was bullying Lei Sanhu by not allowing him to use his giant spirit true body. However, Nie Tian was well aware that he was actually letting Lei Sanhu have his way. Lei Sanhu hadn't used his giant spirit true body, and Nie Tian hadn't used his star soul either. If Nie Tian had used his scarlet dragon's soul just now, Lei Sanhu wouldn't even have been able to stand right now. Bam! Bam! Right at this moment, 2 figures suddenly appeared without any warning and smashed heavily onto the ground, creating 2 large pits. Nie Tian was momentarily stunned. When he saw the faces of the 2 figures clearly, he couldn't help but burst into laughter. Holy shit! Jean de Bao rubbed his eyes when he saw the sudden appearance of the 2 figures. Then, he broke into a grin. Everyone else had a similar reaction. Their faces were tense, and they wanted to laugh but didn't dare to. The 2 of them looked exactly like Lei Sanhu. They were both burly and 2 meters tall. Even the lines of muscles on their faces were identical. The most hilarious thing was that one of them had a large braid on his head, while the other had two smaller braids. They complemented each other perfectly with the three smaller braids on Lei Sanhu's head. There was no doubt that these three big guys were brothers, and triplets at that. Big brother! Second brother! Lei Sanhu cried out dejectedly when he saw the two people who had suddenly appeared beside him. Then, he lowered his head deeply. I've lost. It was obvious that the one with one braid was Lei Sanhu's big brother, Lei Dahu, and the one with two braids was his second brother, Lei Eru. Lei Sanhu was the third brother, so of course he had three braids. One had to admit that the parents of the three Lei brothers were quite the creative bunch. They could tell the triplets apart by their braids. This way, it was easy to tell the three Lei brothers apart. Lei Sanhu's parents were probably speechless. They kept admitting their mistakes, so they came up with this idea. Third brother, you've lost? Lei Eru was stunned. He looked at Nye Tian and asked in astonishment, You've never beaten this kid before? Yes. Lei Sanhu's voice came out of nowhere. He sounded like a wrong child, not daring to raise his head. He probably missed his mother so much that he even felt like crying. This is impossible. All of a sudden, Lei Dahu, who had been silent all this time, let out a furious roar. He stared fixedly at Nye Tian and shouted in a deep voice, You're only at the third level of the manifestation realm. How could you possibly be a match for my third brother? So what if you don't believe it? The truth is right in front of you. You have to believe it. Nye Tian looked at Lei Dahu and smiled faintly. Among the triplets, Lei Dahu was obviously the most normal. He was much more composed than Eru and Sanhu. What surprised Nye Tian even more was that each of the three Lei brothers was stronger than the last. Lei Eru was a fifth-tier titan, while Lei Dahu was a sixth-tier titan. They were truly powerful. It seemed that Lei Sanhu's claim of entering the land of blood massacre and passing through the ancient demon king's tomb was not a bluff. Given the strength of the three brothers, it was indeed possible. Nye Tian looked at the three brothers in front of him and made up his mind. Chapter 238. The three Lei brothers were extremely powerful. If they could all be recruited as guards in Tianluo City, the city's defense would definitely improve. However, Lei Dahu was different from Lei Sanhu. His IQ was much more normal. Coaxing a 3-year-old kid would definitely not work on him. After thinking for a while, Nye Tian said, Lei Sanhu, you have to accept your loss. You don't have to tell us what to do next. Nye Tian could see that the three Lei brothers had a deep relationship with each other. If he wanted to recruit Lei Dahu and Lei Eru, he had to think of a way to get Lei Sanhu. Lei Sanhu suddenly raised his head. The muscles on his face twitched a few times. Then, he made up his mind and roared, I'm a man. I'll keep my word. Even if I spit, I'll make a hole. I'm willing to accept my loss and be your guard. With that, Lei Sanhu strode towards Nye Tian with large strides. Third brother. What's going on? Lei Dahu grabbed Lei Sanhu with a shocked expression. Lei Sanhu was annoyed. He said, Big brother, don't ask. I lost to this kid, so I have to keep my word. At this time, Lei Eru had already asked the people around him about what happened. Then, he whispered into Lei Dahu's ear. Lei Dahu immediately realized what was going on. His gaze towards Nye Tian became vicious as he roared, Little kid, how dare you lie to my third brother? Sensing Lei Dahu's killing intent, Qiu Shan and Tong Fu became nervous. If Lei Dahu made any moves, they would attack. However, Nye Tian was not afraid. He smiled and said, There are so many people watching. Lei Sanhu and I had a fair bet. What do you mean by lie? Do you think your third brother is a 3-year-old kid? That gullible? Upon hearing Nye Tian's words, the crowd burst into laughter. You! Lei Dahu was furious. He couldn't call his brother a fool in front of everyone. Actually, Lei Sanhu wasn't a fool. He was just a little stubborn. Sometimes it was normal. Unfortunately, the person he met was Nye Tian, who completely crushed him in terms of IQ. Lei Sanhu revealed a truth to the crowd. IQ was a shortcoming. Nie Tian didn't care about Lei Dahu's anger and indifferently said, "This city lord isn't such a petty person. Since you want to go back on your brother's words, I'll fulfill your wish. You can take Lei Sanhu away now." Nie Tian waved his hand casually, acting as if he didn't care at all. Lei Dahu was surprised at first, but after seeing Nie Tian's serious expression, he became happy and said, "Third brother, let's go. I'm not leaving." However, Lei Sanhu pulled Lei Dahu away and said in a low, muffled voice with a serious expression, "Big brother, you're willing to be a villain who goes back on his word, but I'm not. Since I've lost, I have to be the little doll's guard." Sanhu you. Lei Dahu was completely speechless. To have such a brother, who am I supposed to reason with? Lei Sanhu walked to Nie Tian's side. Although he was very reluctant, he still stood respectfully. "Very good, Sanhu is indeed a man of character, he keeps his word." Nie Tian slightly nodded his head. He was very satisfied with Lei Sanhu's performance. Of course, sincere praise was also indispensable. "Little doll, what exactly do you want?" Lei Dahu was so angry that his face turned green. In his heart, he cursed Nie Tian for being too hateful, completely treating Lei Sanhu like a child and playing with him. However, Lei Dahu wasn't stupid. When he saw Qiu Shan and Tong Fu behind Nie Tian, his heart immediately sank. Qiu Shan cultivated the dragon whale's 7 breaths technique, so Lei Dahu couldn't see through his strength. Furthermore, Lei Dahu couldn't see through Tong Fu's strength either. He subconsciously thought that the two's strength was above his. If he wanted to use force on Nie Tian, he definitely wouldn't be able to get anything out of it. Nie Tian faintly smiled and said, "I didn't want to do anything. Didn't you see? I already allowed Lei Sanhu to leave. It was him who didn't want to leave. What could I do?" "You." Lei Dahu was about to vomit blood from anger because of Nie Tian. How can there be such a shameless fellow? Seeing that the time was right, Nie Tian said, "Since your third brother has already stayed in Heaven Luo City to be a guard, seeing that you 3 brothers have a deep relationship, I will be kind and let the 2 of you stay as well. The 3 of you brothers will be guards in Heaven Luo City, how about it?" "Don't even think about it." Right after Nie Tian finished speaking, Lei Dahu immediately rejected. Lei Sanhu was not stupid. Wasn't Nie Tian trying to kill 3 birds with 1 stone? Jean de Bao, who was behind Nie Tian, also curled his lips and said in his heart, "Boss is too shameless, I have to learn more from him in the future." Haha. Lei Dahu, don't be in a hurry to reject. Nie Tian had long expected that Lei Dahu would not agree, so he smiled and said, "Of course I won't let the 3 of you be guards of Heaven Luo City for nothing. How about this, the 3 of you will be guards of Heaven Luo City for 3 months, after 3 months, I am willing to give the 3 of you a drop of dragon blood as compensation, and if the 3 of you don't want to stay in Heaven Luo City, you can leave anytime, how about it?" A drop of dragon blood. Upon hearing Nie Tian's words, everyone's eyes turned red as they looked at him. Completely red. Oh my God! A drop of dragon blood. Nie Tian City Lord is too generous. That's right. That's a drop of dragon blood, not a piece of dragon blood stone. Nie Tian City Lord, I am willing to be a guard of Heaven Luo City. Give me a drop of dragon blood. Ah no, give me a piece of dragon bloodstone. I am willing to stay in Heaven Luo City forever as a guard. The surrounding people all went crazy and shouted one after another. A drop of dragon blood. This reward was indeed very high. One must know that the dragon bloodstone itself was a rare treasure, and if one wanted to refine a drop of dragon blood, they would need at least 10 pieces of dragon bloodstones that weighed more than 500 kilograms. Therefore, the value of a drop of dragon blood was definitely not inferior to a 7th-grade medicinal herb. Furthermore, Nie Tian had casually promised to give each of the 3 Lei brothers a drop. That was a whole 3 drops. Oh my God, this reward is enough to move the heart of a true energy stage martial artist. Therefore, when Nye Tian said he would be kind, he was not trying to coax them, but was sincere. Big brother, why don't we? Lei Er, who obviously knew the value of a drop of dragon blood, otherwise he would not have come to participate in the dragon blood martial meet. His expression stiffened for a moment, and he fiercely swallowed his saliva. He was already tempted. Leda, who was also stunned for a moment, but he suddenly thought of something, and his expression immediately became calm. He looked at Nye Tian and decisively rejected, "No." Huh! Nye Tian was slightly stunned. Leda, who actually rejected such a generous reward, this caught him off guard. "City Lord Nye, he can't do it, but I can. I don't want a drop of dragon blood. I only want a piece of dragon bloodstone. Ah no, I only want half a piece of dragon bloodstone. If that's not possible, a small piece is fine too." The surrounding people shouted madly, and the scene was about to boil over. Of course, Nye Tian would not care about these people. They were all at the manifestation realm. Even if they were recruited as guards, it would not increase the overall strength of Heaven Luo City by much. It was better not to have them. Chapter 239. Just as Nye Tian was feeling puzzled, two figures in a VIP box in a teahouse in the distance had already witnessed everything that had happened. Of the two figures, one was a skinny and short old man with a face full of wrinkles. It was as if he was a skeleton wrapped in a skin bag. Moreover, this skeleton was very small, only the height of a 13 or 14-year-old child. However, the old man's eyes were very spirited. They shone brightly and revealed a strange expression. Sitting opposite the old man was a young woman in snow-white clothes. The young woman was spotless, like an orchid in an empty valley. Her eyes were looking into the distance, in the direction where Nye Tian and the others were. Although they were thousands of meters apart, the woman could see everything clearly. Her eyes were icy blue and seemed to contain an extreme coldness. If one looked at them, they would be able to freeze people. If Nye Tian was here, he would definitely exclaim, because this young woman was none other than the beautiful dean of Tyrant Cloud Academy, Rui Qianyu. "Elderly, are the three of them Uncle Lei's sons?" Rui Qianyu suddenly asked with a rare hint of joy in her eyes. "Yes." The old man called oldly slightly bowed and respectfully said, "Saintess, the three of them are Lei Fui's orphans. When the sacred palace was destroyed, Lei Fui and the palace lord chose to live and die with the sacred palace and asked this old servant and the others to leave with the women and children of the sacred palace. I was incompetent. The sacred palace had more than 300 children but only managed to protect the three of them." As Elderly said this, many past events reverberated in his mind. His withered face was soaked with tears. Rui Qianyu looked calm and said indifferently, "Elderly, the bloody slaughter palace no longer exists. Don't call me Saintess in the future." "Saintess?" Elder Li's body trembled when he heard this. He immediately knelt down and said sadly, "Although the sacred palace no longer exists, Saintess, you are still alive. As long as you are alive, there will always be hope for the sacred palace." Rui Qianyu did not look at Elderly. Instead, she closed her icy blue eyes and sighed softly. Her beautiful face revealed a hint of fatigue. After a short while, Rui Qianyu opened her eyes again with the usual coldness and said, "Get up, Elderly. Just call me Miss in the future." "Yes, Saint." Mississippi Oldly replied respectfully. After pondering for a moment, he said, "Miss De Hu and the others have been cultivating with me since they were young. Although their strength isn't at the peak, they can still hold their own. Moreover, they have entered the land of bloody massacre before. If Miss really wants to enter the ancient bloody massacre tomb, then bring them along. The three of them were worthy of the young lady's complete trust. He will definitely be able to do it at the crucial moment. No need." Before Elderly could finish, Rui Qianyu interrupted him and said, "Let the three of them stay in Tian Luo City. I know the Heaven Luo City Lord. I'll greet him later." Mississippi Elderly frowned. In the end, he still said, "Miss, the ancient bloody massacre tomb is extremely dangerous. Every time someone enters, less than 1 in 100 can come out safely. Also, those who come out are. This old servant still feels that Miss shouldn't take the risk. You are the last hope of the Saint Palace. Elderly, don't try to persuade me anymore. I've already decided." Rui Qianyu's tone was calm, but it seemed that she was extremely determined. The ancient bloody massacre tomb was an ancient demon king's ruin that only opened once every 5 years. It was rumored that there were countless ancient pill recipes and peerless martial skills in the tomb, as well as many rare medicinal ingredients. However, the ancient bloody massacre tomb was extremely dangerous. Every time it opened, less than 1 in 100 could come out alive. What was even weirder was that every single person who came out of the tomb either became a lunatic or an idiot. It was rumored that there were ancient demon beasts in the ancient bloody massacre tomb. Those who entered the tomb were either swallowed by the demon beasts or scared insane by the demon beasts. "Miss, can you really not wait until the next time the tomb opens?" Elderly understood his family's young Mrs. temperament very well. Although he knew that there was no hope, he still said it. Rui Qianyu shook her head slightly and said, "The next time the tomb opens is 5 years later. I can't wait. With my current body, can I live for another 5 years?" The last sentence, Rui Qianyu only said it in her heart and didn't tell Elderly. Rui Qianyu was currently at the first level of true elemental realm. According to the lifespan of an ordinary martial artist, she could live for 500 years. When a martial artist cultivated, their physique was far superior to ordinary people. Every time their strength increased by 1 realm, they could increase their lifespan by 100 years. However, Raindrop Thousand Leaf had her own difficulties. Her eyes were the rainbow pupils, ranked 7th among the 10 great innate anomalous pupils. They were even more terrifying than the purple demon eyes of Great Emperor Polestar of the 9 Emperors of the Heaven Realm. Moreover, Rui Qianyu's 9 colored pupils had already opened. The first pupil was the blue pupil, so her eyes were ice blue in color. Opening the 9 colored pupils not only gave Rui Qianyu stronger combat power, but it also had a side effect, and that was to devour the blood energy in the body. Blood energy was the life force and essence of a martial artist. If the blood energy was weak, the martial artist's body would also be weak. Therefore, Rui Qianyu knew that if she didn't find a way to counteract the power of the 9 colored pupils' blood devour, she would not be able to live for another 5 years, or even a year. What was even more fatal was that if she opened the second pupil of the 9 colored pupils, the power of the blood devour would increase exponentially, and then her lifespan would be even shorter. The ancient bloody tomb opened once every 5 years. According to the current situation, Rui Qianyu couldn't wait for another 5 years, so she couldn't miss this opportunity. She had to go. Rui Qianyu was an orphan adopted by the previous dean of Tyrant Cloud Academy. Ever since she was young, she didn't know about her background, until Elderly appeared in Lan Yun City 5 years ago and found her. Through Elderly, Rui Qianyu found out that she was actually from the 3,000 Small Worlds, the most dangerous place, the Bloody Massacre Grounds, and was the Holy Maiden of the Bloody Massacre Palace that once ruled the Bloody Massacre Grounds. 20 years ago, the Bloody Massacre Palace was destroyed by a mysterious force. At that time, Rui Qianyu was still a baby and wasn't in the Bloody Massacre Palace, so she escaped. After finding out about her background, Rui Qianyu fell into deep pain. The burden on her shoulders suddenly became heavier, as though there was a mountain pressing down on her chest, and she couldn't breathe at any time. Rui Qianyu's 9 colored pupils had opened 5 years ago, so she had been devouring blood energy for a whole 5 years. The pain of 5 years was something no one could understand. Elderly, go and tell the lay brothers to stay in Tianluo City. I'm going to register for the Dragon Blood Martial Meet, Rui Qianyu said as she slowly stood up and left. This time, the reason why Rui Qianyu appeared in Tianluo City was also for the Dragon Blood Stone. Dragon blood was a rare treasure. If she could obtain it, not only could it help Rui Qianyu resist the power of the 9-colored pupils, it could also strengthen her martial body. All right. Elderly agreed, then said, Miss, if that little guy called Nie Tian can really fulfill his promise, I'll let Da Hu and the other 2 keep the 3 drops of dragon blood and give them all to you. No need. Rui Qianyu said softly and left. Chapter 240. Heaven Luo City, Dragon Blood Martial Meat Registration Site. Nie Tian looked at Lei Dahu suspiciously and said with a frown, Have you thought it through? Do you really want to reject my suggestion? In order to recruit the 3 lay brothers, Nie Tian took out 3 drops of dragon blood. It was simply a huge investment. Who knew that the other party would not appreciate it? It really made him depressed. I've thought it through. No way. Lei Dahu's reply was resolute. There was no room for discussion. All right. Nie Tian shrugged his shoulders helplessly. Since the other party did not agree, he could not force them. However, he would not let Lei Sanhu go, so he said, Since it's like this, you 2 can leave. Just let your 3rd brother stay. Little kid, you. Lei Dahu's face was flushed red. He could not suppress the anger in his heart. He did not expect that Nie Tian would still not let him go. Hey! At this time, Tong Fu took a step forward and said, Big guy, don't call him little kid, even I have to call him Mr. Nie. You keep calling him little kid, do you think you're more awesome than me? Tong Fu crossed his arms in front of his chest with an arrogant face. He did not put Lei Dahu in his eyes at all. You! Lei Dahu's face became purple, but he knew that Tong Fu's strength was above his, so he did not dare to act rashly. Dao! At this time, an aged voice sounded, and a figure floated over. Master! When Lei Dahu heard this voice, his face immediately became happy. The anger he had just now completely disappeared. He turned around and saw that a skinny old man had appeared beside him. He did not know when, and shouted. The skinny old man that appeared beside Lei Dahu was none other than elderly, and Nie Tian looked at the skinny old man in front of him. He was quite surprised in his heart. The old man before him was short and skinny, not much taller than Tong Fu. Furthermore, there was not the slightest trace of origin energy emanating from his body, making him seem like an ordinary person. However, Nie Tian was able to perceive that this old man's strength was absolutely extremely shocking. He was actually able to appear without anyone noticing. His strength was absolutely not beneath that of the Gong family's old monster, Gong Lingi, from that day. It was even possible that he was even more terrifying than the Mo family's elder, Mo Feng. What made Nie Tian even more surprised was that Lei Dahu actually called this old man master. It turned out that the braids on the heads of the 3 lay brothers were not the work of their weird parents, but the work of their weird master. Nie Tian didn't expect the 3 lay brothers to have such a powerful master. It seemed like he had poked a hornet's nest this time. Qiu Shan and Tong Fu also gasped. Although they didn't know Elder Li's strength, he was Lei Dahu's master, so how could he be weak? Both of them tensed up. Master, this child is deceiving 3rd brother. He wants to use a high-grade spirit stone to make 3rd brother his guard. Lei Dahu saw that reinforcements had arrived and hastily said, I already know about the matter. Elderly waved his hand, but he smiled kindly at Nie Tian and said, Nie Tian City Lord's methods are good. A small bet was enough to trick my disciple into running around in circles. This is truly an eye-opener for I. Master, this child didn't trick me. I willingly made the bet with him. Before Nie Tian could say anything, Lei Sanhu had already defended himself with a face full of confidence. His expression seemed to be saying, I'm so smart, how could this kid trick me? Nie Tian couldn't help but feel a bit guilty. He could tell that this old man was not easy to deal with, so he faintly smiled and said, Old Mister's words are too serious. The bet between me and Lei Sanhu was fair and just, without the slightest bit of falsehood. Everyone here can see that I really did defeat him. That's right, that's right. Tian City Lord really did defeat the big guy. Old man, don't pester him endlessly. Tian's words won the agreement of those around him. These people simply didn't see how powerful Elder Li was, so they followed along. If they knew Elder Li's true strength, they wouldn't even dare to let out a fart. Elder Li faintly smiled and said, I only praised Tian City Lord's methods, but Tian City Lord is in such a hurry to explain himself. Isn't it because he has a guilty conscience? Elder Li clearly saw the battle between Tian and Lei Sanhu. He also found it very strange that Tian was able to repel Lei Sanhu with a single sword strike. Lei Sanhu was his disciple, so he knew very well how strong he was. Even if he didn't use his giant spirit true body, he could still easily deal with a first-level giant spirit martial artist. Therefore, there was only one explanation: Tian had the strength of a giant spirit martial artist. A third-level Wanxiang martial artist actually had the battle strength of a giant spirit martial artist. It was truly unimaginable. Am I guilty? Tian was stunned for a moment before he shrugged and said, All right. Elder Li didn't care about Tian and directly said, We're all smart people, so let's not talk nonsense. I is very satisfied with Tian City Lord's conditions. I'm willing to let Dahu and the other two stay in Heaven Luo City as guards, but only for 3 months. After 3 months, I hope Tian City Lord can keep his promise and give us 3 drops of dragon blood as compensation. Tian was stunned. He didn't think this old man would actually agree to let Lei Dahu and the other two stay in Heaven Luo City as guards. This really was too sudden. He almost couldn't react. Of course. Tian faintly smiled and said, Tian will definitely do what I say. Although the 3 drops of dragon blood were precious, it wasn't difficult for Tian. He had 10% of the dragon blood stone mine, and the mine was very rich. 10% of the dragon blood stone was enough to refine 100 drops of dragon blood. Therefore, Tian didn't care about the 3 drops of dragon blood. Very good. Elder Li slightly nodded and turned to Lei Dahu and the others. Dahu, you 3 stay in Heaven Luo City. I will come find you in 3 months. The reason why Tian suggested letting Lei Dahu and the other 2 be guards for 3 months was because he calculated that the dragon blood martial meet would basically be over after 3 months. Alright. Lei Dahu's face was full of excitement as he nodded heavily. In fact, Lei Dahu was also very tempted by the 3 drops of dragon blood. He didn't dare to agree to Tian's request before because he was afraid his master, Elder Li, wouldn't agree. Now that Elder Li had personally agreed, he naturally didn't have any misgivings. Thank you, master. Lei Eru and Lei Sanhu shouted at the same time, the braids on their heads spinning excitedly. Lei Sanhu was especially happy. He was just worried that his master would scold him, but now that Elder Li had personally agreed, he was the happiest. Elder Li secretly observed Tian and said in his heart, Since the Holy Maiden trusts this kid so much, there shouldn't be a problem handing Dahu and the others over to him. Tian City Lord. At this moment Elder Li seemed to suddenly think of something and said, Do you have time later? My young miss wants to see you. Your young miss. Tian was slightly stunned and said, Do I know her? Elder Li's strength was already unfathomable, so the person he called young miss must have an extraordinary status. Tian didn't remember knowing such a powerful person. It's me who wants to see you. Just as Tian finished speaking, a cold voice sounded. Tian raised his head, and a familiar figure entered his field of vision, causing his face to stiffen. Chapter 241. It's you. Tian didn't think that Rui Qianyu would suddenly appear in Tian Luo City. He couldn't hide the surprise on his face. What surprised Tian even more was that Elder Li actually called Rui Qianyu miss. Judging from his respectful attitude towards Rui Qianyu, it was obvious that she was a servant. Tian only knew that Rui Qianyu was the dean of Tyrant Cloud and had a demonic talent. He didn't expect her to have such a high status. Mississippi, elderly bowed respectfully when he saw Rui Chinyu suddenly appear. Master, who is she? Lei Dahu asked in surprise when he saw Elder Li's actions. It was obvious that Lei Dahu and his brothers didn't know about Rui Chinyu's existence. Elder Li didn't answer Lei Dahu but signaled him not to speak. Rui Chinyu glanced at Nie Tian with her icy blue eyes and said, Nie Tian City Lord, I want to talk to you. Is it convenient? Nie Tian was taken aback for a moment before he smiled and said, Of course. Teacher Ruoyu still owes me 10 days of cultivation time. Let's go. Rui Chinyu said and walked away. Nie Tian said goodbye to Qiushan and the others and left with Rui Chinyu. After a while, the two of them arrived at the private room in the tea house that Rui Chinyu had stayed in before. Teacher Ruoyu, what do you want to say to me? For the first time, Nie Tian was nervous in front of others. He took a deep breath and asked. For some reason, Nie Tian felt that Rui Chinyu was like a block of ice that wouldn't melt for 10,000 years. The colder it was, the more he was attracted to it. Seeing Rui Chinyu again, Nie Tian felt that the coldness around her was even more intense. It was as if she would keep people thousands of miles away from her at all times. Don't call me teacher, I've already left Tyrant Cloud Academy. Rui Chinyu looked in the direction where Nie Tian was, but her eyes did not linger on him. You left Tyrant Cloud Academy? Why? Nie Tian was stunned. There is no why. This is my business, you don't need to know, Rui Chinyu replied coldly. Fine. Nie Tian couldn't help but feel a bit disappointed. Tell me why you are looking for me. Nie Tian didn't know why Rui Chinyu left Tyrant Cloud Academy, but he could feel that she had a lot on her mind. Even someone as cold as Rui Chinyu felt exhausted. Rui Chinyu paused. She seemed to hesitate for a moment but she still said, The 3 Lei brothers are my friends. I hope you can take care of them for me. Don't let them get hurt. Take care of them? Nie Tian was slightly stunned. He smiled and said, Teacher Ruoyu, what are you talking about? I'm only at the manifestation realm, but the 3 Lei brothers are all Titan realm experts. They also have a powerful master with them. They don't need me to take care of them. I think you should ask them to take care of me. Rui Chinyu frowned slightly. She seemed to dislike Nie Tian's joking attitude. She said Rui coldly, I'm not talking about now, I'm talking about the future. If they encounter a powerful enemy, I hope you can protect them. The future? Nie Tian noticed that there was something wrong with Rui Chinyu's tone. It was as if she was making arrangements. He couldn't help but frown and asked, Where are you going? That's none of your business, Rui Chinyu answered bluntly. Her tone was still cold. Nie Tian was smart. He immediately noticed that Rui Chinyu was hiding something from him. He said, Of course it's none of my business where you go. But you still owe me 10 days of cultivation time. I want you to pay it back now. I've said it before. I'm no longer Dean Tyrant Cloud. Rui Chinyu refused flatly. Nie Tian smiled again and said, When we made the agreement, you were still Dean Tyrant Cloud. So the agreement is still valid. You're being unreasonable. Rui Chinyu didn't want to talk nonsense with Nie Tian. She frowned slightly and the coldness on her face became even more intense. Nie Tian's sharp eyes swept across Rui Chinyu's body inch by inch. Suddenly, he noticed that there was a red token on the latter's waist. Soon after, the corner of his mouth curled up weirdly. He said, Since you said that I'm being unreasonable, then I'll show you. As Nie Tian spoke, he suddenly walked forward and hugged onto Rui Chinyu's slim waist. You! Rui Chinyu obviously didn't expect Nie Tian to do such a thing. Her face immediately turned deep red and she screamed. However, in the next moment, Nie Tian let go of her and kept a distance from her. He laughed mischievously and said, Teacher Ruoyu, I'll do as you said just now. As long as the 3 Lei brothers are in Tianluo City, I'll guarantee their safety. However, I'm still very interested in where you're going next. Do I have to tell you just because you're interested? Rui Qianyu was extremely embarrassed and angry. She scolded coldly. At the same time, she kept her guard up against Nie Tian. If it wasn't for the fact that she knew about Nie Tian, just based on his rude behavior just now, she would have died 100 times already. It doesn't matter whether you tell me or not. Nie Tian smiled faintly. Soon after, he took off the red token from Rui Qianyu's waist and kept it. He said in his heart, "Anyway, I'll find out where you're going. Alright, you can leave now." Rui Qianyu took a glance at Nie Tian. Because she was too nervous just now, she didn't notice Nie Tian's little action. Furthermore, she seemed to be a bit afraid that Nie Tian would do something improper again. So she gave a cold order to chase him away. Alright. Nie Tian smiled and nodded. He waved his hand and said, "Teacher Ruyu, we'll meet again." After that, Nie Tian pushed open the door and left. Bastard. See you again. Rui Qianyu felt that Nie Tian's aura had already disappeared. Her pretty face suddenly flushed and she said fiercely. At this moment, the door opened with a squeak. Elder Li's figure appeared. Seeing that Rui Qianyu's expression wasn't right, he couldn't help but ask, "Miss, are you all right?" Rui Qianyu immediately recovered her usual coldness and said faintly, "I'm fine." Elder Li frowned slightly. Although he was confused, he didn't dare to ask too much. He said, "Miss, who exactly is that kid called Nie Tian? Why is his strength so strange? I see that although he only has the strength of the third tier of the Wanxiang realm, his true combat strength is definitely not weaker than an ordinary first tier of the giant spirit realm. Moreover, the martial technique he used in the wager with San Hu was very unusual. It was at least a heaven tier martial technique. Could he be someone from the 4 great clans? I don't know either." Rui Qianyu shook her head and said, "He is the new newcomer king of Tyrant Cloud Academy. When I went back to Blue Cloud City last time, I heard many rumors about him. As for his true identity, I really don't know." Mississippi, when Elder Li heard Rui Qianyu say this, he couldn't help but become cautious. He said, "Do you want this old servant to investigate his identity?" "No need." Rui Qianyu almost blurted out. She immediately realized that she had lost her composure and said, "Although I don't know who he is, I can feel that he is not our enemy." Feel? Elder Li was stunned. He was astonished. Since when did Miss believe in feelings? Elder Li was puzzled, but he didn't think too much about it and didn't continue asking. Chapter 242. What the hell is this token? After leaving the tea house, Nie Tian walked on the streets of Heaven Luo City. He held the command token that Raindrop Qianye had gifted him in his hand. He flipped it over a few times, but he was actually unable to figure out anything about it. The token was crimson, and there was a faint smell of blood flowing inside. But what was strange was that there was not a word on the token, and he couldn't see any other information. A little interesting. As Nie Tian looked at it, the corner of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. He immediately smiled and said, "Let old man Gu take a look. That guy has lived for hundreds of years, he should be able to see something." Thinking so, Nie Tian walked towards Danwu City. After a while, Nie Tian appeared in Danwu City's Alchemist Guild. "Mr. Nie Tian, why are you here?" Before he entered, a familiar voice sounded at the door, very enthusiastic and excited. Nie Tian looked up and saw that it was the beautiful waitress who served him last time. She seemed to be called Lu Yingying. "Miss Yingying." Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "I have something to ask old man Gu. Is he here?" Yes. Lu Yingying didn't expect Nie Tian to actually remember her name. She was so excited that her pretty face blushed and she said, "Mr. Nie, please come with me, Master Gu is in the inner hall." Under Lu Yingying's lead, Nie Tian quickly walked into the Alchemist Guild Hall. After just a few steps, he bumped into a familiar person, Shui Linglong. "Nie Tian." Shui Linglong saw Nie Tian and shouted exaggeratedly. She immediately walked over and said with a smile, "What are you doing here?" Nie Tian noticed that Shui Linglong was looking at him strangely. He immediately smiled and said, "Little girl, the Alchemist Guild isn't opened by your family. You don't allow me to come? How is that possible? Of course I allow you to come, and I welcome you to come." Shui Linglong mischievously smiled. Immediately after, she paused for a moment and said, "But you still have to pay the entrance fee." Entry fee? Nie Tian went into a blank. He still didn't know when the Alchemist Guild had to pay the entry fee. Shui Linglong's small face tensed up and she seriously said, "This princess has to pay an entrance fee to enter your Heaven Luo city, so naturally, you have to pay an entrance fee to enter the Alchemist Guild." Nie Tian didn't know what to say, but he soon realized that this young girl was jealous of him because he had collected the city fees. Nie Tian didn't mind and said, "Little girl, tell me, how much should I pay as an entrance fee? Are you really going to hand it over?" Shui Linglong was just fooling around. She did not expect that Nie Tian would really hand it over. Soon after, she smiled complacently and muttered, "Let this princess think about it." Nie Tian shook his head with a smile and casually said, "Don't talk about it. This mayor will hand over a permanent entrance fee, just 10,000 low-grade crystals. Later, you can ask for it from Fatty." After speaking, Nie Tian no longer cared about Shui Linglong and signaled Lu Yingying to quickly lead the way. He didn't have time to play around with Shui Linglong. He still had to find Gu Yi and ask about the command token. 10,000 low-grade crystals. Shui Linglong's small mouth opened so wide that an egg could be stuffed inside. She couldn't react for a long time. Lu Yingying was also stiff for a long time. She looked at Nie Tian with a surprised expression. She had been a waitress in the Alchemist Guild for 2 years and had seen many rich people who squandered money like it was dirt. But it was the first time she had seen someone who squandered money like Nie Tian. Paying 10,000 low-grade essence crystals as an entry fee, did he think essence crystals were dog shit? Nie Tian saw Lu Yingying standing there in a daze. He couldn't help but smile and said, "Miss Yingying, those who see it have a share. How about this, later, you and Princess Linglong will also go find Fatty and ask for 10,000 low-grade crystals." "Really?" Lu Yingying cried out in surprise. Suddenly, as if she was electrocuted, she jumped up in excitement. Nie Tian looked at the two silly girls from the side. He couldn't help but curl his lips and mumbled, "Isn't it just a few crystals? Is there a need to be so excited?" Nie Tian shook his head and decided to look for Gu Yi himself. "Nie Tian, are you here to look for teacher?" At this time, Shui Linglong suddenly reacted and ran 2 steps to catch up with Nie Tian. "Yes." Nie Tian nodded while walking. Shui Linglong giggled. It was obvious that she was still immersed in the excitement and said, "Why are you looking for teacher? Ask about something?" Nie Tian said. Shui Linglong suddenly jumped to Nie Tian's side and said with a serious face, "You don't need to look for teacher, just ask me. I know everything that teacher knows, and I also know things that teacher doesn't know. Moreover, this princess can give you a discount. Ask a question for 10,000 low-grade crystals, how about it?" Nie Tian's face darkened. This girl must have gone crazy thinking about money. Nie Tian thought for a moment and suddenly said, "Little girl, do you still know what your surname is?" "My surname is Shui." Shui Linglong blurted out without thinking. Nie Tian laughed and said, "If you know that your surname is Shui, why would I dare to ask you?" After speaking, Nie Tian walked past Shui Linglong and walked towards the guild's inner hall. "What do you mean?" Shui Linglong was stunned and didn't react for a long time. At this time, Lu Yingying walked over and cautiously said, "Princess, did Mr. Nie Tian say that you are very weak?" Shui Linglong understood and heavily nodded her head. Shortly after, she reacted and stamped her feet. "Good, Nie Tian, you actually dare to say that this princess is weak. do you not want to live any more? Unfortunately, Nye Tian had already walked far away at this time. Arriving at the inner hall, Nye Tian didn't even knock and directly pushed the door open. Gu Yi just happened to be studying a few ancient pill recipes in the room, but there were a few parts that he couldn't understand and was very distressed. Brother Nye, you came at the right time. Come help your old brother take a look at these pill recipes. Why can't I refine pills? Is there a mistake somewhere? Seeing that Nye Tian had come, Gu Yi was startled at first, but soon after, he rolled his eyes and handed over the pill recipes. Nye Tian took the pill recipes and faintly smiled in his heart. This old fox, he wants to test my attainments in the Tao of alchemy. Alright, I'll let you be amazed. Nye Tian glanced at the pill recipes, thought for a moment and said, there are no problems with these pill recipes, but they all contain the same kind of medicinal ingredient, fire cloud flower. And then? Gu Yi saw that Nye Tian only glanced at the pill recipes and directly asked. He couldn't help but frown. Nye Tian continued, it is precisely because they all contain fire cloud flower that you can't refine pills with these pill recipes. Why? Gu Yi was interested. These are all ancient pill recipes. The medicinal ingredients recorded are determined by the medicinal properties of the fire cloud flower at that time. But the fire cloud flower is a kind of medicinal ingredient with strong adaptability. After tens of thousands of years of evolution, the medicinal properties have long changed, so if you still follow the dosage in the pill recipes to refine pills, of course it won't work. Nye Tian returned the pill recipes to Gu Yi and said, for each pill recipe, double the dosage of the fire cloud flower, and guarantee that you will succeed in refining pills. As expected, Brother Nye is truly a godly person. Gu Yi was immediately enlightened. Previously, when he was concocting pills, he had already sensed that the dosage of the fire cloud flower was insufficient, but he did not dare to casually adjust it, fearing that the pill would explode. Now, after hearing what Nye Tian said, he was suddenly enlightened. I can't be said to be a godly person, I'm just a little awesome, that's all. Nye Tian casually smiled, then took out a token, passed it to Gu Yi and said, Elder Gu, you are experienced and knowledgeable, help me take a look, what kind of token is this? This is… When Gu Yi saw the scarlet token in Nye Tian's hand, his expression suddenly changed, and his entire person froze. Chapter 243. Gu Yi, you recognize this token? Nye Tian saw Gu Yi's strange reaction and immediately understood that the latter definitely recognized this token, and looking at Gu Yi's actions, this was definitely not an ordinary token. This token was obtained from Rui Qianyu. This made Nye Tian even more curious. Gu Yi was stunned for a long time before he reacted, his hand trembling as he received the token, but he did not immediately answer Nye Tian's question. Instead he asked, Nye Tian, where did you get this token? Nye Tian was slightly stunned, he said. This belongs to a friend of mine, I want to know, where is she going? Gu Yi's brows were tightly furrowed. He seemed to be thinking about something, but in the end he still said, Nye Tian, have you heard of a place, the Land of Blood Massacre? The Land of Blood Massacre. Hearing this place, Nye Tian's expression also changed. He said in astonishment, the legendary land of the 3,000 small worlds. There were two places in the 3,000 small worlds that everyone knew, one was Sumi Ling Capital, the other was the Land of Blood Massacre. Sumi Ling Capital was known as the land of the 3,000 small worlds' major forces. It was the core of the entire world, thus its reputation spread far and wide. And the Land of Blood Massacre was known as the land of the 3,000 small worlds' most dangerous place. It was also the #1 forbidden land of the 3,000 small worlds. The reason why it was known was because of its fierce reputation. It was said that the people of the Land of Blood Massacre were the most vicious and evil people of the 3,000 small worlds. There were no rules to speak of. It was a savage world where the strong preyed on the weak. Bloodbat sect leader Gao Jin had once been to the Land of Blood Massacre, and his corpse Luo Kursku art fragment was obtained there. The three lay brothers had also been to the land of blood massacre, at least Lei Sanhu said he had been there. Right. Gui nodded. His expression was unprecedentedly gloomy as he said in horror, "The land of blood massacre is the #1 forbidden land of the 3,000 small worlds. This token is the blood massacre token from the land of blood massacre. Blood slaughter order." Nie Tian was slightly surprised. He looked at Gu Yi and waited for him to continue. Seeing the determination in Nie Tian's eyes, Gu Yi said, "In the bloody massacre grounds, there is a forbidden ground among forbidden grounds, the ancient bloody massacre tomb. Rumor has it that this is the place where an ancient Fey king fell. There are countless ancient pill recipes and peerless martial techniques in the ancient tomb, as well as many rare medicinal herbs. However, the bloody slaughter ancient tomb is extremely dangerous. Moreover, it only opens once every 5 years. The ancient tomb has a powerful bone age restriction, and only young martial artists under the age of 30 are allowed to enter. A long time ago, every time the bloody slaughter ancient tomb opened, the ruler of the bloody slaughter land, the bloody slaughter palace, would send out bloody slaughter orders to the major forces of the 3,000 small worlds. Those who obtained the bloody slaughter orders could enter the bloody slaughter ancient tomb." At this point, Gui paused for a moment as a sliver of terror flashed within his eyes, as though he had thought of something terrifying. And then? Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed as he waited for Gu Yi to continue. Gu Yi sighed but still said, "The ancient bloody tomb is filled with unfathomable dangers. Every time it opens, less than 1 out of 100 people who enter the tomb will be able to come out alive. What's even stranger is that every single person who comes out of the tomb will either become a lunatic or a fool." So strange? The corners of Nie Tian's mouth curled up inexplicably, as he felt a little excited in his heart. "Yes," Gu Yi continued, "rumor has it that there are ancient demonic beasts in the bloody slaughter ancient tomb. Those who enter the ancient tomb are either swallowed by the demonic beasts, or scared insane by the demonic beast." "Demonic beasts?" Nie Tian pondered and said, "Is there such a terrifying demonic beast? Those who dare to enter the bloody slaughter ancient tomb are definitely not ordinary people. They are definitely talented martial artists. Would they be so easily scared?" The blood slaughter token was the proof of entry into the bloody slaughter ancient tomb. Since they knew that there were treasures in the bloody slaughter ancient tomb, those powerful martial artists would definitely send their talented martial artists to enter. If one were to say that there was a demonic beast that could directly scare these martial artists crazy or stupid, Nie Tian really did not believe it. "Yes." Gu Yi nodded his head solemnly, saying, "Rumors are rumors after all. They may not be true, but those who return from the bloody slaughter ancient tomb are indeed crazy or stupid. What's even stranger is that those crazy or stupid martial artists all die mysteriously within 3 months. Some commit suicide, some die in accidents, but no one can live past 3 months." Hearing this, Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed even deeper, and he asked, "Gu Yi, have you seen the corpses of these people before?" "No." Gu Yi shook his head and said, "But I have a friend who has seen them before. He was once invited to treat a martial artist who returned from the bloody slaughter ancient tomb, but that martial artist still died." "What are the symptoms of the corpses?" Nie Tian's expression suddenly changed, and he suddenly asked. "The entire body is riddled with holes, as if thousands of ants have bitten the body, and after death, it turned into a pool of blood." Gu Yi's face paled, and his voice actually trembled slightly. "Riddled with holes, thousands of ants have bitten the body, a pool of blood." Nie Tian muttered to himself, already having a guess in his heart. Gu Yi did not notice Nie Tian's abnormality, and continued to say, "Because those who enter the bloody slaughter ancient tomb either die inside or outside, the bloody slaughter ancient tomb is called the cemetery of geniuses. After so many years, the bloody slaughter token has still been issued, but those big families and powerful forces, even if they receive the token, will not send their disciples or clansmen into the bloody slaughter ancient tomb. That's true. Nye Tian nodded slightly. No one would send their own people to their deaths. Since the bloody slaughter ancient tomb is so strange, have the four great families and the other forces not thought of investigating everything? Nye Tian thought for a moment and then asked. Of course they have. Hearing Nye Tian's question, Gu Yi's expression became even more gloomy, and he said with horror, 20 years ago, the Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb was originally ruled by a force called the Bloody Slaughter Palace. Rumor has it that the Bloody Slaughter Palace's strength is not inferior to the four great families, but one day 20 years ago, the Bloody Slaughter Palace was actually destroyed by a mysterious force. In one night they completely disappeared, and from then on, the Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb was ruled by that mysterious force. Even the four great families did not dare to provoke them. Moreover, the force of the Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb has been living peacefully in the Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb, and has no intention of coming out, so the four great families and the Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb have been living in harmony. So that's how it is. Nye Tian nodded slightly, but in his heart, he thought, just what kind of force could destroy the Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb, which is not inferior to the four great families, in one night? Even Tang Hao chose to live in harmony with the Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb. It seems that this force is not simple. At this moment, Nye Tian took the Bloody Slaughter token back, glanced at it, and immediately understood. He finally understood why Rui Qinyu's tone sounded like she was making arrangements for her funeral. It turned out that she wanted to enter the Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb. Thinking of this, Nye Tian asked, Gu Yi, is the Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb about to open? Gu Yi was stunned, and after calculating the time, he said, according to the opening time of every 5 years, the Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb will open in 5 days. Very good. Nye Tian faintly smiled, and coolly put away the Bloody Slaughter token, then turned around and left without saying anything. Nye Tian. At this moment, Gu Yi suddenly understood and shouted, You can't be thinking of entering the tomb, right? Chapter 244. Until Nye Tian's figure completely disappeared, Gu Yi stood rooted to the ground, unable to react for a long time. Damn! This kid really wants to go to the Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb. After a while, Gu Yi finally understood and exclaimed, directly calling out the eunuch's movements. Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb, that was the Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb, a place that was 100 times, 10,000 times more terrifying than the burial cloud abyss. Just as Gu Yi exclaimed, Nye Tian had already left the Alchemist Association. He already knew that Rui Qinyu wanted to go to the Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb, so he had already made up his mind to go there, to see what kind of strange tricks were hidden inside. On the other hand, Nye Tian also had a bit of selfishness. The 3,000 demon god seals on Jean de Bao was a hidden danger. If he could find high-level medicinal herbs in the Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb, then he could suppress the 3,000 demon god seals once and for all. Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb, the place where the ancient demon king died. Nye Tian murmured, but in his heart, he was thinking about what Gu Yi said about the tragic death of the martial artists that walked out of the ancient tomb. Riddled with holes, thousands of ants biting the body, a pool of blood. Nye Tian's lips curled up in a strange smile, and he thought, I'm afraid that the one who died in the Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb was not the ancient demon king, but an old friend. Nye Tian left the Danwu city, and directly returned to the Heaven Luo city's city lord residence. According to Gu Yi, the Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb would open in 5 days, and Nye Tian did not have much time left. He had to first inform Qiu Shan and the rest, and make arrangements for the Heaven Luo city's matters. As for the dragon blood martial meet, there were still 2 months before it started, and he was not in a hurry. If everything went smoothly, 2 months later, Nye Tian would have returned from the Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb. Just in time for the dragon blood martial meet. If everything went smoothly, Nye Tian would have some gains in the bloody slaughter ancient tomb, and his strength would increase greatly. Then he could participate in the dragon blood martial meet, and meet the geniuses of the South Mountain region. Just as Nye Tian reached the entrance of the governor's mansion, he suddenly felt a bone-piercing chill appear behind him. Soon after, he smiled and said indifferently, "Teacher Ruoyu, why have you returned? Could it be that you missed me?" Nye Tian turned around and saw Rui Qinyu standing behind him. Rui Qinyu looked at Nye Tian, and a strange look flashed across her icy blue eyes. She said coldly, "Give it back to me." "Okay." Nye Tian did not pretend and directly handed over the blood slaughter token. In fact, Nye Tian had already expected that Rui Qinyu would definitely find out that the bloody slaughter token was missing, and she would definitely guess that he had borrowed it for fun. "Why did you steal from me?" Rui Qinyu raised her arm, and the bloody slaughter token was already in her hand. She asked cold. Nye Tian smiled warmly and said, "Teacher Ruoyu, why do you say it so harshly? I only borrowed it for fun." At this time, Elder Li appeared out of nowhere like a ghost without anyone noticing. He smiled slightly and said, "Nye Tian City Lord borrowed the bloody slaughter token, what did you do?" Nye Tian put away his playful attitude and became much more serious. He enunciated the 4 words one by one, "Bloody massacre ancient tomb." "You know?" Rui Qianyu's delicate face showed an unprecedented expression of surprise, and her emotions fluctuated a little. "Yes." Nye Tian nodded lightly and said seriously, "Teacher Ruoyu still owes me 10 days of training. In 5 days, the bloody slaughter ancient tomb will open. There are so many good things in the tomb, is it really appropriate not to bring me along?" "You?" Raindrop Qianye didn't say anything, but Old Li, who was standing next to her, didn't bother to hide the disdain in his eyes. With a smile, he said, "City Lord Nye Tian, I admit that you're very strong. Even if you encounter a giant soul realm expert, you'll be able to put up a fight. However, the ancient bloody tomb is not a place you can enter. I think you still don't know what kind of place this is? If you knew what kind of place the bloody slaughter ancient tomb is, I'm afraid you wouldn't say this." "Is that so?" Nye Tian smiled faintly and said, "The bloody slaughter ancient tomb is the first forbidden place in the 3,000 small worlds, the forbidden place of the land of bloody slaughter. It can be said to be the forbidden place of the forbidden places. It opens once every 5 years, and is the place where an ancient demon king fell. Less than 1 in 100 martial artists that enter the ancient tomb can come out alive. And those martial artists that are lucky enough to come out are either crazy or stupid. Moreover, they will die mysteriously within 3 months, and their corpses will be riddled with holes, as if they were bitten by thousands of ants, and finally turn into a pool of blood." Nye Tian spoke very fluently, and at the end, he smiled provocatively. "Elder Li, am I right?" Elder Li's wrinkled face showed an unconcealable fear, and he immediately froze. He said in a daze, "You know about the bloody slaughter ancient tomb, why do you still want to go?" Elder Li obviously did not expect that not only did Nye Tian know about the bloody slaughter ancient tomb, but he also knew more about it than he did. But he did not understand why Nye Tian still wanted to go if he already knew about the dangers of the bloody slaughter ancient tomb. Was he in a hurry to die? This brat only had the strength of the 3rd level of the Wanxiang realm, but his face looked so calm. Where did he get his confidence from? Nye Tian glanced at Elder Li, and then his gaze landed on Rui Qinyu, and said indifferently, "Teacher Ruoyu is so beautiful, I am afraid that others will have ulterior motives towards her, so I want to follow by her side and be her escort. Is this reason enough?" "Nye Tian, you." Rui Qinyu frowned slightly, but she did not know what to say. The bloody slaughter ancient tomb was filled with unfathomable dangers. Even she had prepared herself for death, but Nye Tian's face was calm as if nothing had happened. Did he think that entering the tomb was like buying cabbages on the street? To Nye Tian, entering the bloody slaughter ancient tomb was indeed no different from buying cabbages on the street. In his previous life, Nye Tian was an extremely arrogant person, and he had gone through all kinds of forbidden areas in the heaven realm. He obtained the primordial star stone in the number 1 forbidden area of the heaven realm, the Dark Sea Galaxy, obtained the 9 extremities war god art in the 7th forbidden area, the Dark Night Stupa Mountain, and even went into the forbidden area of the demon realm, the Hades Mansion. In this life, although his strength was much weaker, his arrogant heart did not weaken at all. How could a mere bloody slaughter ancient tomb scare him? Teacher Royu, don't worry. Although my strength as your escort is a little weak, I can guarantee your safety. You just have to believe in me. Nye Tian smiled faintly, and then said, Since the 2 of you have arrived at the mayor's mansion, why don't you come in and be our guests? Let's take a rest tonight, and we will set off for the bloody slaughter ancient tomb tomorrow morning. How about that? As Nye Tian spoke, he turned around and walked into the mayor's mansion. Rui Qianyu and Elder Li were stunned for a long time before they reacted. Miss, this brat. Elder Li was astonished. He already did not know how to describe Nye Tian. He had seen arrogant people before, but it was definitely his first time seeing someone as arrogant as Nye Tian. He didn't even put the bloody slaughter ancient tomb in his eyes. Just what the hell is this brat? Without a doubt, Nye Tian was the most arrogant person that Elder Li had met in the past few hundred years. There was no one else like him. Rui Qianyu's face that was frozen for thousands of years finally had an expression, and it was a very complicated expression. As if she had gone through a painful struggle, she finally said, Elder Li, let's enter the mansion. Rui Qianyu stepped into the mayor's mansion. Chapter 245. The next morning, outside Heaven Luo City, Nye Tian, Rui Qianyu and the rest appeared. At this time, Nye Tian had already arranged everything in Heaven Luo City and was preparing to leave for the legendary land of Blood Massacre. The Dragon Blood Stone Mine was protected by the Yuan Chamber of Commerce and the Alchemist Guild's Danwu Guards, so there was naturally no problem. Qiu Shan, if there's anything, go find Gu Yi for help. He definitely won't refuse. Nye Tian was worried and reminded Qiu Shan. Don't worry, mister. Qiu Shan nodded heavily. In order to not let others worry, Nye Tian didn't tell them the real purpose of his trip. He only said that he was following Rui Qianyu to cultivate for a period of time, and would definitely return before the Dragon Blood martial meet. Nye Yuro's face was full of reluctance, and her small mouth pouted. Suddenly, she ran to Rui Qianyu's side, and said with a serious expression, Beautiful sister, you have to help Ro take care of Nye Tian Gij. The little girl was obedient and likable, and her clear and bright voice could directly warm people's hearts. Even someone as cold as Rui Qianyu couldn't help but smile, and nodded slightly. Pinky promise, no change for 100 years. Nye Yuro smiled mischievously, and suddenly stretched out her pinky finger. Seeing this, Nye Tian couldn't help but roll his eyes. With Rui Qianyu's personality, if she would pinky promise with you, then it would be really strange. But the next moment, a strange scene really happened. Rui Qianyu thought for a while, but still stretched out her hand. Pinky promise, no change for 100 years. Nye Yuro seriously pulled Rui Qianyu's finger, and shouted out crisply. F***ck. I really saw a ghost. Nye Tian's face was full of astonishment, and he exclaimed in his heart. After a while, Nye Tian and Rui Qianyu didn't waste any more time, and finally left, their figures gradually getting further and further away. The land of bloody massacre was located at the southernmost part of the 3,000 small world. It was not within the 4 regions and was 3,000 miles away from Heaven Luo City. With Nye Tian and Rui Qianyu's speed, they would arrive within 3 days. Along the way, rainy thousand leaves had been cold and indifferent. Nye Tian, on the other hand, seemed to be enjoying himself, as if he was enjoying the scenery. Nye Tian was not worried that anyone would harm him. Although he could not sense Elder Li's aura, He was sure that the old man was nearby and would protect them in secret until the two of them safely entered the ancient bloody massacre tomb. Not long after, Nye Tian and Rui Qianyu set off at the same time. In a secret location within the royal palace of the Empire of Sun Chu. Fei Yu, have you thought it through? Do you really want to accept the blood slaughter order? The old monster of the Gong family, Gong Lingyi, held a red token in his hand. It was the bloody massacre token of the land of bloody massacre. However, Gong Lingyi's hand, which was holding the bloody massacre order, was trembling slightly. His expression was strange, as if he was struggling in pain. Indeed, he was very conflicted about whether or not to hand the bloody massacre order to Gong Feiyu. When the ancient bloody massacre tomb opened, the land of bloody massacre would still send the bloody massacre order to the various forces in the 3,000 small world. Even if these people did not go, the bloody massacre order would definitely be delivered. Originally, Gong Lingyi had rejected the bloody massacre order. In the 3,000 small worlds, everyone knew what kind of place the ancient bloody massacre tomb was. It was known as the Cemetery of Geniuses. However, Gong Feiyu had somehow found out about the ancient bloody massacre tomb. He had begged Gong Lingyi to enter the ancient bloody massacre tomb. Gong Feiyu was the hope of the Gong family's new generation. Gong Lingyi's first reaction was, of course, to disagree. However, Gong Feiyu was very stubborn. He even threatened to die, insisting on going to the ancient bloody massacre tomb. Old ancestor, do you wish for the Gong family to be trapped in a second-rate empire forever? In this world, one must have strength. This grandson believes that this is the hope of our Gong family. As long as I can come out of the land of bloody massacre and bring back a high-grade martial technique, our Gong family will definitely rise. As long as we become an existence like the four great aristocratic families, would we still be afraid of a mere red-clothed elder of the Alchemist Association? Gong Feiyu's expression was filled with rage. He finally said the words that he had suppressed in his heart. The battle with Tong Fu at the Heaven Net Mountain had dealt a huge blow to Gong Feiyu's confidence. Especially the scene of Gu Yi insulting Gong Lingyi at the end, it had cast a huge shadow on him. The shadow in his heart was so huge that ordinary people could not come out. Gong Feiyu still wanted to take revenge for Gong Xing. This time, not only did he want to kill Nye Tian, but he also wanted to kill Tong Fu, Gu Yi, and the others. With this hatred in his heart, he did not fear the threat of the ancient bloody massacre tomb. He was definitely going to the ancient bloody massacre tomb. A trace of ruthlessness flashed in Gong Lingyi's eyes. Gong Feiyu's words had poked his sore spot. That day, when he was insulted by Gu Yi in front of everyone, although Gong Lingyi appeared respectful, he could not control the anger in his heart. He was also a cultivator in the 9th tier of the Enlightenment realm. He was only one step away from condensing the Divine Wheel and opening up the Divine Wheel space. This kind of ability was not weak even in the entire 3,000 small worlds. However, even so, he still did not dare to talk back after being scolded by Gu Yi, let alone fight back. If the Gong family was in existence as terrifying as the four great aristocratic families, let alone Gu Yi, even the chairman of the Alchemist Association would not dare to be disrespectful to the Gong family's patriarch. Gong Feiyu was right about one thing. The ancient bloody massacre tomb was indeed an opportunity for the Gong family. If Gong Feiyu could really come out alive and coincidentally bring out something good, it would be worth it even if he was crazy or stupid. All right. Thinking about this, Gong Lingyi no longer tried to dissuade him. Instead, he handed over the blood slaughter order and said, "Feiyu, since you are so considerate of the family, I will not dissuade you anymore. Moreover, I will personally escort you to the land of bloody massacre and ensure that you enter the ancient bloody massacre tomb safely." "Thank you, Patriarch." Gong Feiyu knelt on one knee and accepted the blood slaughter order excitedly. The blood slaughter order was the proof to enter the ancient bloody bat tomb. Without it, the people in the land of Bloody Massacre would not allow one to enter. Although the ancient Bloody Massacre tomb was known as the Genius Cemetery, there were also great opportunities in it. It was not a place that ordinary people could enter. Nyetian. As long as I can come out of the ancient Bloody Massacre tomb alive, it will be your disaster. Gong Feiyu gripped the blood slaughter order in his hand tightly and revealed an unconcealable ferocious look on his face. He would never have thought that he would not need to come out of the ancient Bloody Massacre tomb. If he was lucky, he might be able to meet Nyetian in the tomb. If the two of them met, it would definitely be a battle to the death. At the same time, many forces in the 3,000 small worlds made their move. Although the ancient Bloody Massacre tomb was infamous, there were still people who were not afraid of death who dared to challenge it. Sometimes people would make the best estimate of their own luck. If there was really a lucky person who could walk out of the ancient Bloody Massacre tomb unscathed, why couldn't that lucky person be me? Therefore, at this moment, many people began to move. Their destination was the land of Bloody Massacre. The land of Bloody Massacre, the Bloody Massacre Demon Valley. A huge cave abode slowly rose from the ground, as if there was an invisible giant hand supporting it from the ground. Chapter 246. 3 days later, in the Bloody Massacre ground, Bloody Massacre Demon Valley. Every time the Bloody Massacre ancient tomb opened, it would appear in the Demon Valley. At this moment, there were countless people gathered in the Demon Valley. Although it was crowded, it was not noisy. On the contrary, it was very quiet. Everyone was quietly waiting for the Bloody Massacre ancient tomb to fully open. Of course, Nyetian and Rui Qinyu were among them. Moreover, Elder Li was not far away from them and was constantly monitoring their every move. However, Old Li could only guarantee the safety of Nyetian and Rui Qinyu outside the Bloody Massacre ancient tomb. If they entered the tomb, the two would have to rely on their own abilities. During the 3 days of travel, Nyetian did not idle. He took the time to inscribe a second-rank star soul, Heavenly Fragrance Dragon Roar. Nyetian already had a second-rank star soul, the soul of the Crimson Dragon. Adding the Heavenly Fragrance Dragon Roar, he now had 2 second-rank star souls. So far, Nyetian had not used a second-rank star soul, but he estimated that a second-rank star soul was enough to kill a giant spirit realm warrior. Now that he had 2 star souls, Nyetian's confidence had increased significantly. Now, his strength was at the 3rd level of the Wanxiang realm. He had awakened 4,096 stars in his body. The absolute strength of his hands exceeded 1,000,000 pounds, and his mental energy was as high as 43. The more stars he awakened, the easier it was for Nyetian to inscribe star souls. The current him could inscribe a first-rank star soul in half a day. A second-rank star soul was much more complicated than a first-rank star soul. For a slightly more complicated second-rank star soul, Nyetian would need at least 3 days. This time, when he came to the land of Bloody Massacre, Nyetian found that it was simply a huge bloody slaughterhouse. The smell of blood filled the air. Warriors below the Origin Spirit Realm could not even breathe, let alone survive in the land of Bloody Massacre. The guards of the land of Blood Massacre were all black-clothed people wearing black ghost masks. They looked quite mysterious, and each of them was not weak. They were all at the giant spirit realm or above. Nyetian could tell that the one ruling the land of Bloody Massacre was indeed a very powerful force. It was no wonder that even the 4 great families did not dare to provoke them. However, Nyetian was faced with a problem. He didn't have a blood slaughter token. It would be troublesome when he entered the Bloody Slaughter ancient tomb. Each and every one of these blood slaughter guards looked ferocious. One look and you could tell that they weren't people to be trifled with. On the other hand, Nyetian did not expect that there would be so many people who were not afraid of death in the Bloody Massacre ancient tomb. This world was really strange. They knew that it was a dead end in front of them, but there were still so many people who rushed forward for the slightest bit of hope. They wanted nothing more than to smash their heads against the wall. At this moment, Nye Tian suddenly noticed several unfriendly gazes directed at him. To be precise, these gazes were not looking at Nye Tian, but at Rui Qianyu. Rui Qianyu was too conspicuous in this group of people. Most of these people who wanted to enter the bloody slaughter ancient tomb were ferocious. Rui Qianyu's existence was like a flower blooming proudly in a large pile of cow dung. Naturally, she attracted many gazes. As a green leaf closest to the flower, Nye Tian was also targeted by a few piles of cow dung. Sensing that someone was walking over, not only did Nye Tian not become nervous, but he even smiled in relief. He thought to himself, I just said that I don't have a blood slaughter token, and someone immediately came to give it to me. My luck is really extraordinarily good. Scram! At this moment, 3 figures walked over. 2 of them looked extremely impatient. They waved their hands casually, indicating for Nye Tian to leave. Nye Tian did not even look at these 3 people. With just a thought, he already knew that these 3 were 9th-level Wanxiang martial artists. He really did not understand. Where did 3 mere 9th-level Wanxiang martial artists get the courage to enter the bloody slaughter ancient tomb? Wasn't this rushing to their deaths? Although Nye Tian's strength was inferior to these 3 people, his battle strength far surpassed theirs. Moreover, he had other plans. Nye Tian did not move at all, completely ignoring these 3 people. One of them, a bearded man, chuckled as he looked Nye Tian up and down. With a single glance, he saw through Nye Tian's strength. Then, with a mocking expression, he said, Brat, do you want to die? Do you think you're worthy of standing next to this beauty? I'll count to 3. If you don't scram, I'll kill you. Thinking brat, know your place. Such a beautiful woman is not someone you can touch. That's right. Tuck your tail in and scram as far away as possible. The other 2 echoed from the side. When the surrounding people saw this scene, they only glanced at it once or twice and lost interest. In the land of bloody massacre, such fights were common. Deaths were common, so 1 or 2 more wouldn't make much of a difference. Today, everyone's focus was on the bloody slaughter ancient tomb. Who had the leisure to pay attention to a fight? The guards of the land of bloody slaughter clearly had no intention of interfering either. Each of them stood ramrod straight like stalks that could not be sold. Nye Tian shook his head speechlessly. He did not even have the mood to look at these people. His opponent was weak and stupid. There was no challenge at all. Rui Qianyu also stood like a block of ice, with no intention of making a move. Count to 3? Alright, you go ahead. I'll be merciful and wait for you to finish before making a move. Nye Tian finally glanced at the full beard and said lazily, Stinking brat, you're courting death. The full beard was not stupid. He could see that Nye Tian did not take him seriously at all. Instantly enraged, he suddenly gathered all the origin energy in his body and fiercely struck out with a palm. Ouch! At this moment, a few spectators exclaimed in shock. In their hearts, they had already pictured the tragic scene of Nye Tian being smashed to death by a palm. After all, the full beard had the strength of a 9th-tier all-creation adept, while Nye Tian was only at the 3rd tier. The difference between them was too great. However, in the next moment, Nye Tian did not dodge. He only raised his arm lightly and struck out with a fist. Bang! With a dull thud, the sound of bones breaking rang out in the air. The full beard screamed and was sent flying. My arm! After landing on the ground, the full beard instantly let out a miserable howl like a pig being slaughtered. Half of his entire arm had been smashed off by Nye Tian's punch. The full beard had underestimated Nye Tian and foolishly struck out with his fist. He did not even use any martial technique. He was completely competing with Nye Tian in terms of strength. As for Nye Tian, he did not use any martial techniques either. He was not afraid at all in terms of strength. The power of 4,096 stars awakened in Nye Tian's body, and the strength of his hands exceeded 1,000,000 kilograms. In terms of pure strength, even a 9th-tier giant spirit martial artist might not be a match for Nye Tian, let alone a mere 9th-tier all-creation adept. The spectators in the surroundings all widened their eyes. If their eye sockets were a little bigger, their eyeballs would have popped out of their sockets. Who would have thought that a 3rd-tier all-creation adept could so easily cripple a 9th-tier all-creation adept? It was simply inconceivable. Chapter 247. Huh! Nye Tian suddenly felt a wave of killing intent and could not help but be stunned. Then, he saw a familiar face staring at him. It was Gong Feiyu. Gong Feiyu, this guy wants to enter the bloody massacre ancient tomb too? This is going to be interesting. Nye Tian's lips curled up slightly as a greeting to Gong Feiyu. Nye Tian, you're dead. Ah. Gong Feiyu's face was so gloomy that it looked like it was bleeding. At the same time, he was extremely excited. When he was in Heaven Luo City, he did not dare to attack Nye Tian because he was afraid of Gu Yi's power. Now that he was in the bloody massacre ancient tomb, it was simply a great killing opportunity given to him by the heavens. Nye Tian did not care about Gong Feiyu's excitement. He took a step forward and walked up to the bearded man. He smiled faintly. How is it? Do you think I'm qualified to stand in front of this beauty now? Yes, 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 yes. The bearded man nodded his head like a rattle drum. His face was as pale as a piece of paper. It was not because he had lost blood, but because he was scared. His 2 companions were also scared out of their wits. They trembled for a long time and did not dare to let out a fart. The bearded man was the strongest among the 3 of them. If he could not even take 1 punch from Nye Tian, they would not be able to do so. Give it to me. Nye Tian did not waste any time and stretched out his hand. Mister, take all of them. I've given you my space ring. The bearded man thought that Nye Tian was going to rob him. He quickly took his things aside and finally handed over his space ring. Nye Tian was speechless. He smiled and said, I want the blood slaughter token. Who wants your junk? Blood slaughter token? The bearded man was stunned. He immediately took out the blood slaughter token and handed it over to Nye Tian respectfully. Get lost. Nye Tian took the blood slaughter token and waved his hand casually, indicating that the bearded man could get lost. The bearded man was surprised and delighted. Then, he and his 2 companions scampered away in fear. If you don't kill them, aren't you afraid that they will come back for revenge? Rui Qinyu frowned and said. Nye Tian faintly smiled and said, If you don't pull out the roots, the weeds will grow again when the spring breeze blows. I understood this principle. But the 3 of them are just small weeds, and I'm a towering mountain. Do I need to worry about their revenge? Rui Qianyu was speechless and stopped talking. What Nye Tian said was the truth. Just based on the 3 little scums just now, even if they had the power behind them, they were at most a few big blades of grass. It was impossible for them to threaten the mountain that was Nye Tian. Moreover, Nye Tian allowing them to leave was equivalent to saving their lives. With their strength, entering the bloody slaughter ancient tomb would only result in one thing: death. Just as Nye Tian and Rui Qianyu were talking, another gaze was locked on Nye Tian. Even Nye Tian didn't notice the other party's existence. Not far away, Emosher's pair of strange eyes stared at Nye Tian. That's right, Emosher and Mr. Z also came to the bloody slaughter ancient tomb. And the people who escorted them here, other than the Fengqin Empire's Wang Lianqing, there was also a middle-aged man with a knife scar on his face. Emosher looked at Nye Tian with a puzzled expression. He felt that Nye Tian's aura was very familiar, very similar to the person who entered the burial cloud abyss that day. However, he couldn't feel any scarlet flame's aura from Nye Tian, so he didn't dare to confirm Nye Tian's identity. Feng Lianqing, who is that brat? Emosher couldn't help but ask Feng Lianqing, who was beside him. Feng Lianqing was slightly stunned, then immediately noticed Nye Tian. He was stunned and said, Heaven Luo City Lord, he's also here. Tian Luo City Governor? Mo10 furrowed his brows, and his young face became extremely gloomy. He immediately understood that Nie Tian was the one who had entered the burial cloud abyss and devoured Qi, was Lai Xnz. Master, is there something strange about this Heaven Luo City Lord? Mr. Z noticed that Mo Shi's expression wasn't right and couldn't help but ask. Mo Shi smiled faintly. His expression did not change, but he secretly sent a voice transmission to Mr. Z. Z, after entering the ancient bloody tomb, pay more attention to this person. If it's possible, kill him directly. Yes. Mr. Purple didn't ask why and answered directly. Of course, Mo Shi would not enter the ancient bloody massacre tomb this time. Instead, he would let Mr. Z enter. Although Mo Shi did not know what was so strange about the bloody massacre ancient tomb, he was still very confident in Mr. Z's abilities. Moreover, Mr. Z was formed from the blazing purple flame's forked tongue, so he was not afraid of any demonic beasts at all. It was even more impossible for him to go crazy or become an idiot. As long as she could come out alive, she would definitely gain something. As long as Mr. Z could come out of the ancient bloody massacre tomb alive, then the dragon blood martial meat would be in the bag. Mr. Z, this time, our young sect master will also enter the ancient bloody massacre tomb. If you can meet him, I hope you can help him at the crucial moment. At this time, the scar-faced man beside Mr. Z suddenly stepped forward and said humbly, Hall Master Xie, the young sect master you mentioned can't be young Master Dongfang Du, right? Before Mr. Z could say anything, Feng Lianqing, who was at the side, was already stunned and couldn't help but ask. The scar-faced man in front of him was none other than the Hall Master of the Transformation God Sect's Green Dragon Hall, Xie Feng. It turned out that the last time Mr. Z met Xie Feng in Snow-Blowing City, he cured the frost-hidden illness that had plagued him for many years. Therefore, the two of them had some mutual benefit. This time, the reason why Mo Shi and Mr. Z knew about the ancient bloody massacre tomb was also because Xie Feng told them. At this time, the young sect master that Xie Feng mentioned was none other than the transformation god sect master Dongfang Yu's son, Dongfang Du. Dongfang Yu was Qiu Shan's enemy. Back then, the destruction of Qiu Shan's origin meridian was orchestrated by Dongfang Yu. However, up until now, Qiu Shan still didn't know why Dongfang Yu wanted to harm him. He hadn't even seen Dongfang Yu's face. Speaking of this Dongfang Du, he was definitely an influential figure in the Southern Mountain region. He was the leader of the younger generation in the Southern Mountain region and a monstrous genius ranked second on the Southern Mountain region's genius ranking. Therefore, when Feng Lianqing thought that the young sect master that Xie Feng mentioned was Dongfang Du, he was shocked. If Dongfang Du continued to cultivate steadily, he would definitely become a peak existence in the Southern Mountain region in at most 20 years. Exactly. Xie Feng nodded and sighed. The young sect master is young and insolent. He insisted on entering the ancient bloody massacre tomb. Even the Lord sect master couldn't do anything about it. Feng Lianqing nodded slightly in agreement. Everyone in the Southern Mountain region knew that in addition to Dongfang Du's monstrous talent, his ruthlessness was not the least bit inferior to his talent. Dongfang Du had once taken a fancy to a girl. That girl was the princess of a third-rate empire, but she was not satisfied with Dongfang Du. In a fit of anger, Dongfang Du killed his way into the imperial palace of a third-rate empire alone and turned the entire imperial palace into a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood in one night. Even that princess died in his hands in the end. The viciousness of his heart and the ruthlessness of his methods were evident. Therefore, Dongfang Du also had a nickname, Dongfang Du. Feng Lianqing didn't know how strong Dongfang Du was now, but he had a strange thought in his heart. He hoped that Dongfang Du would die in the ancient bloody massacre tomb. If such a person were to live, he would definitely be a scourge and a threat to everyone. Just as Feng Lianqing was letting his imagination run wild, a sudden change occurred. Chapter 248. Rumble. Violent noises continued to ring out from the bloody massacre valley. The ground shook even more violently, as if the entire space was about to collapse. In the face of this situation, the people in the bloody massacre valley did not panic. Instead, they were pleasantly surprised. Everyone knew that the bloody massacre ancient tomb was about to appear. Rumble. Rumble. The ground shook and the wind blew. Sand and stones flew everywhere. Yellow dust filled the sky. The two cliffs above the bloody massacre valley seemed to have come to life and began to move slowly. Crack, crack, crack. In an instant, the ground of the bloody massacre valley was torn apart, and a huge gully was formed. The martial artists retreated, but many fell into the gully and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The guards of the land of bloody massacre seemed to have known that this would happen. They had already found a suitable place to land. They were all looking at the people in the valley. The black ghost mask was like a mocking face, mocking the people's ignorance. Nie Tian and Rui Qinyu had already found a safe place to land. If they fell into the gully without even entering the gate of the bloody massacre ancient tomb, it would be too much of a waste. Slowly, as the crack in the ground grew larger and larger, a magnificent cave dwelling was finally revealed in the depths of the ravine. The first thing that appeared in front of the cave abode was a door with a ghost face. It opened its huge black mouth as if it wanted to swallow everyone. Yah! The moment the ghost face door appeared, the 9 extreme chaos beast in the chaotic original coffin in Nie Tian's body woke up again. Little 9. Nie Tian did not expect the 9 extreme chaos beast to suddenly wake up. He could not help but shout. Little 9 did not seem to hear him. Its red eyes looked around twice, as if it was very interested in the ghost face door. After looking for a long time, Little 9 made a strange expression, as if it had discovered something but was not sure. It could only shake its head exaggeratedly. Huh! Nie Tian was puzzled. He could not guess what Little 9 had discovered. Are you okay? Rui Qinyu noticed that Nie Tian was not acting normally and suddenly asked. I'm fine. I'm just a little excited. Nie Tian giggled to hide his excitement. He did not want others to know that there was a spirit beast with independent consciousness in his body. A moment later, the bloody slaughter ancient tomb's huge cave abode finally stabilized. However, everyone could only see a door with a ghostly face. Beyond the door was a pitch-black space, like a spatial black hole. Their vision and senses could not enter. At this time, Nie Tian was stunned to discover that the ghost-faced door was actually dozens of meters tall. It slowly drilled out of the ground like a huge tombstone, giving people a strong sense of oppression. Moreover, Nie Tian had also sensed that the smell of blood within the ancient bloody massacre tomb was even denser, and it was at least several times denser than outside. What surprised him even more was that he actually smelled a familiar aura from it. Seems like I was right. The one who died here wasn't some ancient demon king, but an old friend from my past life. Nie Tian's lips curled up as he thought to himself. Actually, when Gu Yi told him about the tragic deaths of those who came back from the ancient bloody massacre tomb, Nie Tian had already begun to have doubts. Riddled with holes, bitten by thousands of ants, a pool of blood. Nie Tian still remembered the tragic deaths described by Gu Yi. These details reminded him of an enemy from his past life. Now that he had personally come to the ancient bloody massacre tomb and felt that familiar aura, Nie Tian was 70 to 80% sure of his guess. It was just that he could not see what was behind the ghost-face door, so Nie Tian could not be 100% sure of his guess. After a while, when the ghost-face door had completely stabilized, the land of bloody massacre's guards jumped down one by one and stood guard on both sides of the door. The ghost-faced door and the ghost-faced guards complemented each other very well, and there was no sense of incongruity. At this time, the cultivators began to slowly enter. Before entering, everyone obediently handed over the blood slaughter token to the guards on both sides. Nie Tian guessed that there must have been some tragic bloodshed in the past. Otherwise, these cultivators would not be so obedient to the Land of Bloody Massacre's guards. It had to be said that the Land of Bloody Massacre's guards were indeed very strong. All of them were at least in the giant spirit realm. Nie Tian didn't know where all these powerful experts had come from. The Land of Bloody Massacre. It seems that there is indeed a force worth paying attention to hidden here, Nie Tian said indifferently in his heart. Suddenly, Nie Tian glanced at Rui Qinyu. The latter seemed to be looking at the Bloody Massacre's guards with a hint of anger. Although she was trying to suppress it, Nie Tian still noticed it. Could there be a grudge between Rui Qinyu and the Bloody Massacre's guards? Nie Tian was slightly surprised and secretly noted this point. Little did Nie Tian know that Rui Qinyu was the former ruler of the Land of Bloody Massacre, the Holy Maiden of the Bloody Massacre Palace. And the Bloody Massacre Palace had been destroyed by these Bloody Massacre's guards in one night. There was not a grudge between the two, but a deep hatred that could not be resolved until death. Soon, it was Nie Tian and Rui Qinyu's turn. Rui Qinyu walked in front and entered first. She looked back at Nie Tian. Although her eyes were cold, she still nodded at Nie Tian. In the next moment, Rui Qinyu stepped into the ghost-faced door. Her figure flashed and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Not even the slightest aura could be sensed. Nie Tian frowned slightly. He could see that the ghost-faced door in front of him was actually a layer of space barrier. As for what was behind the barrier, no one knew. Nie Tian did not hesitate. Although he knew that it was a dangerous path ahead, he still had to force himself to move forward. After handing the Bloody Massacre token to the Bloody Massacre guards, Nie Tian stepped in. Puff! Nie Tian felt the space barrier briefly open and close. The next moment, a dazzling white light lit up in front of him, forcing him to close his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, the space around Nie Tian had completely changed. He had actually arrived in a dense forest. The surrounding mountains were steep and full of thorns and thorns. It didn't seem like a cave at all, but more like an enormous mountain range. Nie Tian looked up. Although the light was dazzling, the strange thing was that there was no sun in the sky. He did not know where the light around him came from. This should be an independent space. The ghost-faced door just now was just a space teleportation formation. After thinking for a while, Nie Tian was sure that there should be an independent space in front of him. However, what made Nie Tian feel strange was that he was the only one around him. He could not see anyone else at all. It seems that the teleportation formation of the ghost-faced door will teleport the person who enters to any place in the Bloody Massacre ancient tomb. Nie Tian sighed softly and frowned. I don't know how big this independent space is. I'm afraid it will not be easy to find Rui Qinyu. Nie Tian was not sure how big the space in front of him was. Moreover, this place did not look much different from the forest outside. It did not look like a dangerous place at all. This made Nie Tian somewhat puzzled. Chapter 249. Nie Tian soon came to a clear spring under a waterfall. After taking a deep breath, he suddenly felt refreshed. I didn't expect the heaven and earth spiritual energy to be so rich here. It seems to be much stronger than the cultivation room of Tyrant Cloud Academy. Nie Tian murmured, and his eyes quickly fell on the waterfall in front of him. The waterfall in front of him was very high, at least 1,000 meters high. The rushing mountain water was like a flowing white cloth covering the cliff. There seems to be a cave behind the waterfall. Maybe there is something unusual in it? Nie Tian used his divine sense to explore, and the next moment, his face showed a surprised expression. Help! Suddenly, a panicked cry for help came from behind the waterfall. Immediately, two figures rushed out from the waterfall. They were actually two martial artists. Bang! Bang! The two martial artists were dripping with blood. After landing, they directly smashed through two boulders, as if they were hit or thrown out by something. Nie Tian just glanced at the two martial artists. They were both in the first layer of the giant spirit realm, and then immediately focused all his attention behind the waterfall. He could feel that there was a strange power spreading in the cave behind the waterfall. This power seemed to be very mysterious, and it was unexpectedly difficult to capture. "Be careful, that guy is a white light. I don't know what it is." One of the martial artists on the ground struggled to climb up and warned Nietian. Nietian didn't care about him. His divine sense spread out as much as possible, and suddenly, he found that a snow-white figure was rushing towards him at an extremely fast speed. So fast! Nietian's face couldn't help but change. The speed of that thing was so fast that he couldn't even see what it was. "No matter what you are, I will kill you first." His face darkened. Nietian no longer had any scruples. Sword Absolute Heaven Slash appeared in his hand, and he stabbed at the flying white light. Suddenly, the sword's edge was filled with sword chi, and thousands of flowing sword shadows flew out, like a sky full of sharp arrows covering the sky. The two warriors were shocked speechless when they saw the power of Nietian's sword. What Nietian used was the 300 billion sword shadows of the primary 3 moves of the AO sword tactic. If his strength reached the Celestial Emperor realm, he could stab out hundreds of billions of flowing light sword shadows. That was the real change of the mountains and rivers, as well as the world. The current Nietian could also unleash 10,000 sword shadows with a single strike, but its power was much weaker. He didn't know what was inside the waterfall, so he just used 300 billion sword shadows to test it out. However, at this moment, something strange happened. Nietian was shocked to discover that the streak of white light suddenly split into 9 identical white figures that shot towards him like arrows that had just been shot from a bow, completely disregarding the overwhelming number of sword shadows that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Surprised, Nietian made a prompt decision. With a flash of green light, he activated the Extreme Wood Jade Sky Armor. Sword 17. At the same time, the sword Absolute Heaven Beheader rotated in the air, and a spherical sword shadow shield appeared, covering Nietian. Whoosh! 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 The next moment, there were countless sounds of breaking air, and the light sword shadow shield on Nietian's body was directly broken. The white figure stuck to Nietian's body and flashed away. Nietian's heart skipped a beat. He had concentrated all his divine sense just now, but he didn't see the white figure's true appearance clearly. He only vaguely saw a white claw flash past the corner of his eye. "What is this?" The two warriors screamed and subconsciously hid behind Nietian. Nietian suddenly turned around and saw a small white thing on a boulder not far away, staring at him. This little thing was as white as snow, covered with white fur. It looked like a fox, but its body was much smaller than a fox, only the size of a normal person's fist. "What the hell?" The two warriors widened their eyes in shock. This was the little thing that had attacked them in the cave under the waterfall. "This is..." Nietian looked at the little thing on the boulder and was also stunned. A phantom snow fox. The phantom snow fox was a spirit beast of unknown rank, but it was extremely fast. It was rumored that if a phantom snow fox's speed reached its limit, it could even tear space apart. In his previous life, Nietian had often seen these little creatures as spirit pets of martial artists. The phantom snow fox was so small that it could be held in the palm of one's hand. Moreover, it was light and cute, and it was the favorite of countless female martial artists. Nietian couldn't help but furrow his brows. Phantom snow foxes are gentle by nature. Even if they're disturbed, they won't attack. At most, they'll run away. Why is this little guy baring its fangs and looking so violent? The phantom snow fox was a very gentle spirit beast, and it would never attack people. However, this one in front of him had attacked Nietian, which was very unusual. Nietian suddenly realized that the phantom snow fox's eyes were red, and it exuded a bloody and violent aura. It was very similar to the aura of the ghost-faced door. Why is there something wrong with its eyes? Nye Tian was slightly stunned, and he immediately had a bad feeling. After entering the bloody massacre ancient tomb, Nye Tian realized that the place did not have the bloody aura of the ghost-faced door. Instead, it was peaceful, as if it was a secret cultivation ground of a famous sect. I understand now. Suddenly, Nye Tian raised his head and looked at the sky. There was still no sun, but the light was dazzling. At this moment, Nye Tian's face revealed a rare look of panic. That's right, it was a look of panic. Ever since his rebirth, Nye Tian had been calm and composed no matter what enemies he faced. However, this time, he felt a real sense of danger. Brother, what do you understand? The other two martial artists were startled when they saw Nye Tian's abnormal expression and asked in alarm. Nye Tian completely ignored them. Instead, he fixed his gaze on the phantom snow fox, preventing it from making any sudden movements. Although the phantom snow fox was a spirit pet, it was very troublesome to deal with if it attacked first. It was much more terrifying than the average giant spirit martial artist. Swoosh! At this moment, the phantom snow fox's eyes flashed, and it grinned. In an instant, it turned into a ray of white light and attacked Nye Tian. Nye Tian had the extreme wood jade sky armor, so he was not afraid of the phantom snow fox's attack. However, it was not easy to catch the phantom snow fox. Yah! Suddenly, little Nine awoke from the chaotic original coffin and let out a surprised cry. Catch it! Nye Tian did not care too much and directly shouted to little Nine. Yah! Little Nine cried out excitedly. Then, it turned into a ray of red light and disappeared in a flash. In the blink of an eye, little Nine once again appeared in the chaotic original coffin. The phantom snow fox appeared under its little claws. In just an instant, little Nine not only caught the phantom snow fox, but also left a soul imprint on it and directly pulled it towards the chaotic original coffin. This speed was simply unreasonable. The phantom snow fox entered the chaotic original coffin. The scarlet red in its eyes immediately disappeared and was replaced by a clear and bright light. Yah! Little Nine was extremely happy. Its little claws rubbed the phantom snow fox's head, as if it was comforting the latter and telling it not to be afraid. The phantom snow fox meekly snuggled against little Nine's body, evidently accepting the latter's comfort. Chapter 250. Nye Tian had not expected the ninth extreme chaos beast to be so fast. In the blink of an eye, it had captured the mirage snow fox and brought it into the chaotic original coffin. This showed that the ninth extreme chaos beast was no weaker than a giant spirit realm martial artist. The other two martial artists were dumbfounded. They had no idea what was going on. They only saw the mirage snow fox turn into a white light and rush over. Then, a red light appeared on Nye Tian's body. Then, the white light and the red light disappeared. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. The two martial artists did not even see what the red light was. Nye Tian could not be bothered with them. He had just discovered a shocking secret through the mirage snow fox. The forest in front of him was an illusion. That's right. It was definitely an illusion. Actually, Nye Tian had sensed it the moment he entered. The door with the ghostly face had clearly emitted a bloody and violent aura. But after he entered, the bloody aura had completely disappeared. Instead, it had turned into a forest filled with heaven and earth spiritual energy. This was too illogical. Another thing was that the lighting here was not normal. It gave Nye Tian an illusory feeling. It was too blinding. Of course, the last thing that convinced Nye Tian that this was an illusion was the mirage snow fox. The mirage snow fox was originally an extremely docile spirit beast. Suddenly, it had become violent. This was very unusual. Nye Tian also knew another secret about the mirage snow fox. The mirage snow fox could change the color of its eyes according to the different illusions in the outside world. Therefore, although the mirage snow fox was also in the illusion, its eyes could see through everything. Those blood-red eyes were the true colors of the world in front of it. Huff! Nye Tian let out a deep breath of impure air and once again observed the surroundings. He couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. It was obvious that the illusion in front of him had been set up by the owner of the Bloody Massacre ancient tomb. Everyone who entered the Bloody Massacre ancient tomb would be trapped in the illusion the moment they took a step. Therefore, rather than saying that these martial artists had entered the Bloody Massacre ancient tomb, it was more accurate to say that they had entered the tomb directly. The Bloody Massacre ancient tomb was obviously the Bloody Massacre illusion city. This was a huge trap. Moreover, it was a trap that opened once every 5 years, waiting for those arrogant geniuses to jump into it. Nye Tian took a look. From the realism of the illusion before him, it was at least a rank 5 illusion. To be able to set up such a large-scale Tier 5 illusion, the Bloody Massacre Mound's master must be a Tier 6 illusionist at the very least. A 6th-grade illusionist was definitely a terrifying existence that caused people to tremble in fear. Illusionists were a rare breed. If an alchemist was 1 in 10,000, then an illusionist was 1 in a billion. The most terrifying illusionist that Nye Tian had encountered in his previous life was only a rank 7 illusionist. This person was one of the Heaven Realm's 9 emperors, the Illusion Emperor, 100 Li Fengqian. He had even seen Li Fengqian kill a Heavenly Emperor stage powerhouse in an instant with his own eyes. It was rumored in the Heaven Domain that if the Illusion Emperor Li Fengqian's mastery in illusions reached the 8th rank, even the Snow Emperor of the 9 Emperors would not be his match. Li Fengqian once boasted that if he could become a rank 9 illusionist, he could turn the entire Heaven Realm's divine realm into an illusory world. It was unknown how arrogant his words were, but the terror of an illusionist was something that everyone knew. Even if Li Fengqian only had the attainment of a rank 7 illusionist, his strength was still publicly acknowledged as the 2nd strongest among the 9 emperors. Only the peak Heavenly Emperor Snow Emperor could suppress him. Rank 5 illusion. Nye Tian confirmed this point, and his forehead could not help but break out in cold sweat. In this world, the number of people who could become a rank 6 illusionist could be counted on one hand. And these people, Nye Tian knew all of them. Corpse Demon Lord, is that really you? Finally, Nye Tian muttered a name, Corpse Demon Lord. Corpse Demon Lord, one of the 9 great demon lords under the Demon Emperor Qi Wu Shaotian. Furthermore, he was the creator of the Corpse Demon Curse Gu art. Actually, before Nye Tian entered the Bloody Massacre Mound, he had already thought of this person, Corpse Demon Lord. Riddled with thousands of holes, devoured by thousands of ants, a pool of blood. The death of the person who came out of the Bloody Massacre Mound that Gu Yi mentioned was exactly the same as the death of the person who died from the Corpse Demon Curse Gu. Hence, at that time, Nye Tian had a conjecture that the Bloody Massacre Mound was not some ancient demon king's land of death at all, but the land of Corpse Demon Lord's death. Corpse Demon Lord was killed by Nye Tian back then. On that day, the two of them had a great battle in the Daynite Divine Domain's Blood Bodhi domain. Nye Tian finally defeated Corpse Demon Lord's enormous ultimate corpse demon body, sending him into the demonic world's dark night abyss. Nye Tian thought that Corpse Demon Lord was already dead. But looking at it now, he was still careless back then, and actually left Corpse Demon Lord with a crippled life. Furthermore, he even played tricks in the 3,000 small world. Previously, Nye Tian had smelled Corpse Demon Lord's aura from the ghost face door, but he could not be sure at that time. Now, he was 100% sure that the owner of the Bloody Massacre Mound was Corpse Demon Lord. In addition to the Corpse Demon body's incomparable strength, Corpse Demon Lord was also a rank 6 illusionist. It was not difficult for him to set up this Bloody Massacre fantasy city. In fact, there was one thing that Nye Tian did not know. The Corpse Demon Curse Gu art that Bloodbat Sect Master Gao Jing cultivated came from the Bloody Massacre ground. This also proved that the owner of the Bloody Massacre Mound was Corpse Demon Lord. Corpse Demon Lord, what are you trying to do? I destroyed your ultimate corpse demon body back then, are you still unwilling to give up? Nye Tian gradually calmed down, and began to think about Corpse Demon Lord's purpose in setting up the bloody massacre fantasy city. Corpse Demon Body. Suddenly, Nye Tian thought of a possibility, and his pupils shrank in shock. He exclaimed inwardly, that's right. He wants to recultivate the Corpse Demon Body. Corpse Demon Curse Gu art was originally an evil martial art created by Corpse Demon Lord. Among them, the most terrifying was the Corpse Demon Body. But to cultivate the Corpse Demon Body, it was necessary to destroy one's own spirit, and then use the destroyed spirit as the blood vessel for the Corpse Demon Body. Then, the spirit of other martial artists would be used to feed the Corpse Demon Body, and finally, the Corpse Demon Body would be formed. Back then, Corpse Demon Lord's Corpse Demon Body used the spirit of 100,000 martial artists as a sacrifice to condense the huge Corpse Demon Body, which was unimaginably terrifying. But even so, Corpse Demon Lord still suffered a crushing defeat in the hands of Nye Tian, and the Corpse Demon Body was also destroyed by Nye Tian. Now that Corpse Demon Lord had set up the bloody massacre ancient mound, he intended to attract those reckless genius martial artists, and then seize the spirit of the martial artists who died in the bloody massacre ancient mound to feed the Corpse Demon Body. Good plan. Nye Tian was shocked. These martial artists must have thought that the heaven and earth spirit energy here is abundant when they enter the bloody massacre fantasy city, so they began to cultivate crazily. Little did they know that what they absorbed was not the heaven and earth spirit energy, but the bloody massacre ancient mound's fiendish blood chi. As long as the fiendish blood chi in a martial artist's body is enough, the fiendish blood chi will slowly invade them, and finally their spirit will be seized. Chapter 251. Finally understanding Corpse Demon King's goal, Nye Tian's face turned pale. This was the first time he showed such an expression. Corpse Demon King was defeated by me more than 100 years ago. The bloody slaughter ancient tomb opens once every 5 years, so it has opened at least 20 times now. Each time, there are tens of thousands of martial artists entering. Based on this, Corpse Demon King must have absorbed at least 100,000 martial artists' soul. F***ck. Calculating in his heart, Nye Tian couldn't help but curse. The soul of 100,000 martial artists was enough for Corpse Demon King to form a 1,000-meter-tall Corpse Demon Body. Back then, Gao Jin, the sectmaster of the Bloodbat sect, had only been 100 meters tall, but it had already given Nye Tian a headache. Now, he had to face a 1,000-meter-tall Corpse Luo demon. More importantly, Nye Tian was still in the illusion. To leave the bloody slaughter ancient tomb, he must first break the illusion and then think of a way to defeat Corpse Demon King. This was an impossible task. Now, Nye Tian understood why Corpse Demon King didn't use the corpse worms to turn all the martial artists into corpse puppets. It was because he needed the martial artist's soul to feed his Corpse Demon Body. As for those who were lucky enough to escape the illusion, they were hit by the corpse curse Gu. After leaving the bloody slaughter ancient tomb, no matter how strong they could not resist the corpse curse Gu. In the end, they could only die from the poison. Everything made sense. Why less than 1 in 100 martial artists could walk out of the bloody slaughter ancient tomb alive? Why those who were lucky enough to walk out were all crazy or stupid, and still died within 3 months. Everything behind this was controlled by Corpse Demon King. Yeah. At this time, Little Nine suddenly called out, as if curious about what Nye Tian was thinking. Little guy, did you already know this was an illusion? Nye Tian suddenly remembered Little Nine's strange actions before he entered the bloody slaughter ancient tomb. Now that he thought about it, it seemed to be a warning. Yeah. Little Nine nodded his little head, his exaggerated red eyes looking at Nye Tian adorably. That expression seemed to say, "Didn't I warn you?" Nye Tian wanted to cry. He couldn't understand the little thing's words at all. In truth, even if Nye Tian understood Little Nine's warning, it wouldn't change anything. He would still enter the bloody slaughter ancient tomb, but he would be mentally prepared, and wouldn't be as shocked as he was now. Little Nine, since you already knew that this was an illusion, then you definitely know where the eye of the illusion is, right? Nye Tian suddenly thought of something and asked in surprise. Even before entering the bloody massacre ancient tomb, the ninth extreme chaos beast had already sensed that something was amiss. Given its acute senses, it should not have been difficult for it to discover the location of the illusory eye. The illusory eye was the core of the illusion and also the weakest point. If one could find it and break the illusory eye, the illusion would naturally collapse on its own. Oh! Little Nine pursed his lips, his fiery red forehead revealing several ripples. Evidently he did not understand what Nye Tian was saying. The illusory eye is the weakest point of the illusion spirit array. In your opinion, it is the place with the densest blood qi in the illusion. Do you know where it is? Nye Tian explained briefly. Yeah. Oh. Little Nine called out and then nodded his little head. His body suddenly surged with a red glow, circled in the air, and drew a door. The door. Damn! Nye Tian screamed and suddenly understood. So the illusory eye of the illusion is the ghost face door. Right. Nye Tian immediately reacted and slapped himself hard. He shouted, I am so stupid. The corpse Luo demon monarch actually disguised the ghost face door, but the blood qi on the door is too strong. So even if he disguised it, there is still a lingering smell of blood. After confirming the location of the illusory eye, Nye Tian was a little excited. But then came the problem. Even if he knew that the ghost face door was the illusory eye, he was in the illusion now, and there was no way he could find the ghost face door. To be honest, right now Nye Tian could not even tell north from south, let alone find the ghost face door. The ghost face door was the illusory eye, and at the same time, it was a transmission array. It could send martial artists to any place in the blood slaughter ancient tomb. Nye Tian did not know where he was at. Benefactor, are you okay? At this time, the two martial artists came over, and one of them asked. At this time, Nye Tian looked at the two martial artists in front of him. One was tall and the other was short. They did not look old. The tall one was about 15 or 16 years old, and the short one was only 13 or 14 years old. And Nye Tian's eyes stopped on the short martial artist. He suddenly found something strange. He frowned and said, You are a girl? Although the short martial artist was dressed like a man, her eyes and movements were very bashful. Moreover, she had a pretty face. She was obviously a girl. A 13 or 14-year-old first-layer giant spirit martial artist. This martial talent was very amazing. Big brother. The short martial artist nodded subconsciously. He looked at the tall martial artist beside him, clearly a little afraid. Nye Tian smiled bitterly and thought to himself, Am I really that scary? After thinking for a moment, Nye Tian asked, Who are you people? Why are you here? The man was a little older. He calmed down and said, Benefactor, I am Duanmu Lu. This is my sister, Duanmu Weiner. Duanmu. Before Duanmu Lu finished speaking, Nye Tian was stunned. He asked, What is your relationship with the Qiankuan Palace Lord, Duanmu Bai? Nye Tian remembered that Qiushan had told him before that the South Mountain region had two sects that were even stronger than first-rate empires. They were the top sects in the South Mountain region, called the South Transformation God Sect and the North Qiankuan Sect. The South Transformation God Sect referred to the God Transformation Sect, while the North Qiankuan referred to the Qiankuan Palace. The God Transformation Sect Lord, Dongfangyu, was Qiushan's enemy. Nye Tian naturally knew this. At the same time, he also knew that the Qiankuan Palace Lord was called Duanmu Bai. He was an expert whose strength was no weaker than Dongfangyu. The two people in front of him were called Duanmu Lu and Duanmu Weiner. Perhaps they were related to Duanmu Bai. In the South Mountain region, there were not many people with the compound surname Duanmu. Here are a few spirit pills. Take them first. Without waiting for Duanmu Lu to speak, Nie Tian threw a few spirit pills over. The Duanmu Lu siblings were stunned, but they didn't hesitate and directly took the spirit pills. Nie Tian saw that the siblings had never left home before. Who would come out to gain experience without even bringing basic spirit pills to heal their wounds? Although the two of them were covered in blood and looked a little disheveled, the clothes they wore were very luxurious. Moreover, they were brazenly wearing spatial rings. Weren't they obviously inviting others to rob them? Fortunately, the person they encountered was Nie Tian. If it was someone else, they would definitely be dead without a trace left. Speak. Who is Duanmu Bai to you? Nie Tian asked again after the two of them relaxed their expressions. Chapter 252. Nie Tian's heart sank slightly. He didn't expect Duanmu Lu and Duanmu Weiner to be Duanmu Bai's son and daughter. It seemed that he had done something big unintentionally. Duanmu Bai was a figure on the same level as Dongfang Yu in the Nanshan region. Even in the 3,000 small worlds, he could barely be ranked. No matter what, it was a big favor to save his children. However, at this time, Nie Tian's face darkened and he frowned. Immediately, his cold eyes swept over and he shouted coldly, "You're lying! If you were really Duanmu Bai's children, why would he let you come to the bloody slaughtering ancient tomb?" Nie Tian was confused, but he just wanted to scare the brother and sister. After all, the bloody slaughtering ancient tomb had a fierce reputation. Warriors could only enter, but never leave. It was obviously unreasonable for Duanmu Bai to let his children come to such a dangerous place. Duanmu Lu was so nervous that sweat appeared on his forehead. He didn't know what to say for a moment. At this time, Duanmu Weiner stood up and said, "My brother and I ran out without my father's knowledge. I insisted on coming, and my brother only came with me. If you want to complain to my father, just let him punish me. It has nothing to do with my brother." Duanmu Weiner had a righteous look, but in Nie Tian's eyes, it was extremely ridiculous. Complain? Nie Tian was speechless. Duanmu Weiner, this little girl, was so silly that she was adorably silly. The first thing she thought of was that she was afraid that Nie Tian would complain to Duanmu Bai. Nie Tian guessed that the brother and sister didn't even know what kind of place the bloody slaughtering ancient tomb was. It was unknown where he had stolen 2 blood slaughter tokens from, but he had rushed over excitedly. The brother and sister could only be described with one word: deceiving. Duanmu Bai was probably going crazy with anxiety right now. He must be rushing towards the land of bloody massacre without stopping. There was no doubt that the Duanmu siblings were inexperienced children. Even their thoughts were very pure. Even after coming to the bloody slaughter ancient tomb, they were still worried about their father's punishment. It was really speechless. "Do you know what kind of place the ancient bloody tomb is?" Nie Tian asked. "Of course I know." Duanmu Weiner calmed down a lot and said with pride, "The ancient bloody massacre tomb is the place where an ancient demon king fell. There are many ancient martial arts and high-grade herbs in there. I will definitely be able to bring back a heaven-ranked martial art and give father a surprise." Nie Tian was speechless. This little girl really didn't know anything. Duanmu Bai must be pleasantly surprised right now, so surprised that he wanted to cry but had no tears. A pair of children entering the bloody slaughter ancient tomb at the same time. No father would be able to take it. Duanmu Bai was probably going to collapse. However, this pair of siblings were very lucky to be able to meet each other after entering the tomb. It could be counted as a great fortune in misfortune. I wonder where Rui Qianyu is right now? Suddenly thinking of Rui Qianyu, Nie Tian couldn't help but show a hint of worry on his face. "Benefactor, I have yet to ask for your name." At this time, Duanmu Lu walked over and asked politely, "I am Nie Tian." Nie Tian didn't hide and said directly, Nye Tian. Duanmu Lu suddenly froze, as if thinking of something, and said, Benefactor, are you the city lord of Tian Luo City? So I am this famous. Nye Tian smiled faintly and nodded slightly. He didn't expect his name to be so famous. When the news of the Dragon Blood Stone and the Dragon Blood Martial Meat spread out, Tian Luo City went from an unknown small city in a third-rate empire to being known by everyone. At the same time, the name of the city lord of Tian Luo City, Nye Tian, was also known by everyone in the southern mountain region. I didn't expect to meet the Nye Tian city lord here. What a pleasant surprise! Duanmu Lu's face revealed undisguised excitement, as if he had met a legendary figure. Duanmu Weiner also stepped forward and said, Nye Tian city lord, is the Dragon Blood Martial Meat real? Will you really take out half of the Dragon Blood Stone as the reward for the martial meat? Of course. Nye Tian smiled faintly. He didn't expect this little girl to doubt him. Duanmu Weiner immediately became excited and said, Brother, we must train hard in the bloody slaughter ancient tomb. The heaven and earth spirit chi here is much denser than the outside world. Our training speed will definitely be faster. If we can raise our strength, we might even be able to participate in the Dragon Blood Martial Meat and get the Dragon Blood Stone as a reward. Duanmu Lu nodded his head heavily, agreeing with his sister's idea. Nye Tian frowned as he listened. The bloody slaughter ancient tomb was filled with a bloody aura. It was not the heaven and earth spirit chi at all. If he were to train hard here, he would sooner or later refine himself into a puppet. After thinking for a while, Nye Tian decided not to tell the Duanmu siblings about the illusion. It wouldn't be good if he scared the children. Nye Tian said, You too, don't be so busy with training. I have something that I need your help with. Benefactor, please speak. As long as we siblings can do it, we will definitely not decline. Duanmu Lu was very straightforward. Moreover, he had a pure heart and was very graceful. He had long regarded Nye Tian as a trustworthy person. Nye Tian said, I want to find something. Can the two of you accompany me to look for it? Duanmu Lu did not ask anything and directly nodded. Duanmu Weiner, however, was quick-witted. She tilted her head and asked, Big brother Nye Tian, what are you looking for? Is it an 8th-tier medicinal herb or a 9th-tier emperor weapon? If you find it, can you share some with us? Duanmu Lu was a little angry. He pulled his sister and said to Nye Tian, Benefactor, don't mind Wan. She is young and doesn't know what's important. Please don't take it to heart. Nye Tian shook his head and smiled. Between these two siblings, one was clever and clever, while the other was too honest. It was estimated that Duanmu Lu had been bullied by Duanmu Weiner every day. After a pause, Nye Tian did not hide it and said, I want to find the gate with the ghost face we came in from. The ghost face gate? Duanmu Weiner was stunned. She immediately blurted out, Is that gate a 9th-tier emperor weapon? No. Nye Tian shook his head and said, But that gate is related to everyone's life and death, including the three of us. Duanmu Lu and Duanmu Weiner were stunned at the same time. Seeing that Nye Tian's expression was serious and did not seem to be joking, their faces became heavy. Nye Tian said, I can't tell you too much now. But don't cultivate. Don't breathe too much of the air here. Duanmu Lu and his sister were both stunned and didn't know what to say. Don't ask why. Just trust me. Nye Tian didn't wait for them to speak and directly interrupted them. His eyes emitted a domineering confidence. We will listen to Benefactor. Duanmu Lu nodded heavily. Duanmu Weiner also nodded helplessly. They didn't know that they were actually in an endless blood evil chi. If they cultivated desperately, the evil chi would enter their body. Not only would it not increase their strength, it would even damage their yuan meridians and yuan spirit. Benefactor, if you want to find the ghost face gate, this thing may help you. At this time, Duanmu Lu seemed to think of something and took out a fist-sized crystal. Chapter 253. True Crystal. Nye Tian was very excited. He didn't think that Duanmu Lu could actually take out a piece of true crystal. True crystal was a very special type of crystal. Not only could it absorb 7 colored halos and emit light in the dark, but more importantly, it could illuminate the reality of all illusions. Thus, it was called the Forbidden Stone of Illusionists. However, true crystals were extremely rare, and it was said that they were all destroyed by generations of illusionists. After all, illusionists wouldn't allow something that could restrain them to exist. Even in the heaven realm in his previous life, Nye Tian only heard that the Snow Empress of the 9 Emperors had an extremely beautiful and exquisite piece of true crystal. No one else had ever heard of true crystals. So this stone is called true crystal. Duanmu Weiner suddenly had a look of realization, and also took out a piece of true crystal, which was the same as the one in Duanmu Lu's hand. Nye Tian was completely stunned, and couldn't say a word for a long time. The true crystal, which was regarded as a forbidden stone by illusionists, was like cabbages in the hands of these 2 siblings, and they even had a portion each. At this time, Nye Tian finally understood that these 2 siblings didn't meet by chance. It must be that the true crystal on them affected the teleportation formation of the Ghost Face Gate, and thus they were teleported to the same place. Duanmu Lu, how did you get the true crystal in your hand? Nye Tian took a deep breath, forced himself to calm down, and asked. Benefactor, this is a birthday gift from my father. Duanmu Lu could see that Nye Tian was very interested in the true crystal, so he handed it over and said, Benefactor, if you want it, I can give it to you. Duanmu Lu had a pure heart, and wasn't pretentious. Nye Tian saved their lives, so a small piece of true crystal as compensation was not too much. Nye Tian swallowed his saliva and calmed down for a moment. Then, he took the true crystal and said, Duanmu Lu, I won't take your true crystal for nothing. I'll definitely compensate you later. Duanmu Lu didn't know the value of the true crystal, but Nye Tian did. Accepting the former's true crystal just like that was akin to cheating a kid. However, Nye Tian really couldn't resist the temptation of the true crystal. Moreover, he really needed it right now. If worst comes to worst, I'll just give him a drop of dragon blood after we get out of the ancient bloody massacre tomb, Nye Tian said inwardly, feeling a little better about his conscience. Benefactor, what are you talking about? You saved the lives of us brother and sister. You're like a second parent to us. A mere true G crystal is nothing. Duanmu Lu's expression was solemn. He didn't think much of it. Nye Tian looked at the young man in front of him. Although this guy was a little naive, his character was very good. It was very rare. Big brother Nye Tian. Duanmu Wan who was at the side, suddenly smiled at this time. She also handed over the true G crystal and said with a smile, Wan will also give the true G crystal to you. You give me a dragon bloodstone, how about it? Duanmu Weiner knew that Nye Tian was the city lord of Heaven Luo City. The dragon blood martial meet was held in Heaven Luo City, so he definitely had a lot of dragon bloodstones on him. In her eyes, the dragon bloodstone was much better than this true crystal that could only be seen but not used. Wan Er. Duanmu Lu glared at his sister angrily. None of your business. Duanmu Weiner pouted. She had an unconvinced look on her face. Nye Tian smiled faintly. He immediately took Duanmu Weiner's true crystal and said, As long as we can get out of the ancient bloody tomb, I will give you brother and sister a drop of dragon blood each. Really? Duanmu Wan Er's eyes widened to the size of a cow's eyes, and she almost jumped up in excitement. Benefactor, this. Duanmu Lu was a little embarrassed. His face was a little red. Nye Tian casually waved his hand and said, You don't have to call me benefactor in the future. Just call me Nye Tian. Exchanging a drop of dragon blood for a true crystal. This deal was too worth it. How can I do that? You are my benefactor. Duanmu Lu had a serious look on his face. He was also very determined. Up to you. Nie Tian didn't mind. It was just a form of address. Immediately, Nie Tian held a true crystal in each hand. He used his divine sense to explore the two crystals. Slowly, in Nie Tian's eyes, a strange change occurred in the crystal. There were all kinds of images flowing in it. However, all of them were bloody. The smell of blood was very heavy. Only Nie Tian could see this change. Duanmu brother and sister couldn't see it. The true crystal reflected the entire ancient bloody tomb. Nie Tian's divine sense could see countless warriors desperately fighting for spiritual weapons and martial arts. There were also many people hiding in the valley and training hard. The illusion in front of him was too real. Even Nie Tian was confused when he first came in, let alone other warriors. It was no exaggeration to say that many warriors didn't even know what an illusionist was. They had never heard of the word illusion. Rui Qianyu. Suddenly, an image flashed in Nie Tian's eyes. It turned out to be a familiar figure. Rui Qianyu. Rui Qianyu walked forward alone. She didn't care about the fighting around her. It was as if she was walking alone in the barren mountains and desert. And she can see that this is an illusion. Nie Tian immediately understood. Rui Qianyu also saw that everything around her was an illusion. She has the 9-colored pupil, one of the 10 innate abnormal pupils. A rank 5 illusion is nothing in front of the 9-colored pupil. The 9-colored pupil was one of the 10 innate abnormal pupils. It was even more abnormal than the purple demon eye of Great Emperor Ziwei. Even if Rui Qianyu only opened one pupil, it was enough for her to see the flaws of the illusion. At this time, Nie Tian was stunned again. He was surprised to find that Rui Qianyu was not far from him. She was only a few dozen kilometers away. Moreover, she was still walking in his direction. If I can meet up with Rui Qianyu, with her strength and the 9-colored pupil, I have a much better chance of breaking the illusion. Just now, Nie Tian had been worried that even if he reached the ghost face gate, he would have a hard time breaking through the illusory eye's defenses. However, with Rainy and Thousand Leaves around, things would be much easier. Rui Qianyu was a true element realm warrior. In addition, the 9-colored pupil had a natural restraining effect on illusions. It was not difficult to break the defense of the ghost face gate. Killing intent? Just when Nie Tian was feeling a little complacent, he suddenly felt a cold killing intent behind him. From the true crystal, an extremely fast figure rushed toward Nie Tian. "Be careful!" Nie Tian roared. He immediately turned around. Without hesitation, he circulated all the spirit energy in his body to the extreme and stabbed out with his sword. Pung! A muffled sound. A violent wave of air whistled over, but most of the attack was dissipated by Nie Tian's sword light. Even so, Nie Tian still took a few steps back before stabilizing his body. "I've finally found you, Nie Tian." A figure landed on the ground, his eyes radiating intense killing intent. "I finally found you." Chapter 254. Gong Feiyu. Nie Tian called out his name when he saw the face of the newcomer. Ever since Gong Feiyu entered the bloody slaughter ancient tomb, he did not cultivate or fight for treasures. Instead, he focused all his attention on finding Nie Tian. Sure enough, hard work paid off. He actually found him. Gong Feiyu. Upon hearing this name, Duanmu Lu and Duanmu Weiner exchanged glances. Shock was written all over their faces. Gong Feiyu was the 9th genius on the Nanshan Domain Genius ranking. He was extremely famous among the younger generation in the Nanshan Domain, so it was not surprising that the Duanmu siblings knew his name. However, what shocked them even more was that Gong Feiyu seemed to have a deep hatred for Nie Tian. It was as if he could not wait to skin Nie Tian alive. "Nie Tian, we finally meet again," Gong Feiyu said faintly. Gong Feiyu said faintly. His voice was filled with killing intent and mockery. "Originally, you could have lived for a few more days by hiding in Tianluo City. I didn't expect you to come to the ancient bloody tomb. It seems that you are my greatest gain this time." Nie Tian's expression was as calm as water. He said indifferently, Gong Feiyu, Gong Xing deserved his death. If you want to avenge him, I can give you a chance. After we leave the bloody slaughter ancient tomb, we can fight to the death in the dragon blood martial meet. But don't bother me now. I don't have time to play with you. Although Gong Feiyu was a 5th-stage giant spirit and was the 9th genius on the Nanshan Domain Genius ranking, Nie Tian still did not care about him. Nie Tian had 2 second-grade star souls. Any one of them could seriously injure Gong Feiyu or even kill him instantly. However, the most important thing for Nie Tian now was to find the ghostly face gate and break the illusion. He did not want to waste his energy on Gong Feiyu. Nie Tian. Gong Feiyu's lips curled up coldly. He said coldly, You are still so stubborn even when you are about to die. Do you think you can walk out of the bloody slaughter ancient tomb alive? I'm going to kill you right now. Without that dwarf of an inferior race, and without Gu Yi's protection, I'd like to see who else can save you? Gong Feiyu could not wait any longer. A huge, scorching sun flying ant's giant spiritual true form appeared behind him. Its enormous aura was overwhelming, as if it could devour a part of the world. Benefactor! Duanmu Lu shouted, wanting to help. Back off! Nie Tian waved his hand to stop Duanmu Lu. He stared at Gong Feiyu and released a strong killing intent from his body. He said, Since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish. Humph! You are about to die, yet you are still so arrogant. Gong Feiyu laughed coldly and said angrily, Pay for my brother's death with your life. The blazing sun flying ant's gigantic wings trembled in the air, stirring up a gust of wind that was like a sharp blade in the wind. The Duanmu siblings were unable to withstand it and were forced to retreat. Nie Tian was in the midst of the surging airwaves. He activated the topwood jade sky armor and remained motionless like a boulder in the wind. Duanmu Lu and Duanmu Weiner looked at Nie Tian in horror. The blazing sun flying ant's aura was so ferocious that even they could not withstand it. How could Nie Tian, a mere martial artist at the 3rd tier of the all-creation realm, stand there as if nothing had happened? It was simply too strange. Duanmu Lu realized that he could not judge Nie Tian based on the strength of an ordinary martial artist. Gong Feiyu had already flown up to a height of 100 meters. His handsome face revealed a hideous smile, and his arrogant laughter was filled with the desire for revenge. Nie Tian endured the pressure of the blazing sun flying ant's giant spiritual true form. Although he did not show any reaction on his face, he was slightly surprised. The blazing sun flying ant is indeed powerful. An ordinary giant spiritual martial artist would find it difficult to withstand such an aura. Gong Feiyu is indeed the 9th genius of the Nanshan region. Despite Gong Feiyu's strength, he was unable to withstand the power of Tong Fu's hammer that day. This showed how terrifying the power of the hammer of destruction was. Blazing sun flying ant, Ant Queen incinerates the world. At this moment, Gong Feiyu made a move. The blazing sun flying ant's wings suddenly shook, and a blazing origin power whizzed out. It instantly condensed into a huge pillar of fire, which was like a huge sword that blasted towards Nie Tian. The blazing pillar of fire whizzed, and the air within a radius of a few hundred meters appeared to be in an illusory state. One could faintly see streaks of blood mist. Gong Feiyu's attack had almost made the illusory realm reveal its reality. Faced with his opponent's powerful attack, Nie Tian merely smiled lightly. The chaotic original coffin in his body immediately reacted, and the crimson fire spirit star soul transformed into a majestic power that surged out. Gong Feiyu, I'll use you as a test. Let's see how strong a 2nd-tier star soul is. Nie Tian was fearless. Instead, he chuckled and immediately struck out with his palm. Roar! Suddenly, a clear and intense dragon roar resounded in the air. It was as if it was going to tear through the sky. The next moment, a crimson fire dragon soared into the sky and charged towards Gong Feiyu's attack. In midair, the crimson dragon's soul rolled its huge body and went against the wind. It faintly stirred up the power of heaven and earth around it, and the blazing flames seemed to contain the power to annihilate everything. This. Duanmu Lu and Duanmu Weiner were so shocked that their faces turned pale. They were speechless. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, who would have thought that a third-tier all-creation martial artist could unleash such a terrifying power? How is this possible? Gong Feiyu sensed the terrifying aura of the Crimson Dragon's soul from afar. He was instantly dazed, and his face turned pale. He could already sense that the Crimson Dragon's soul was extremely powerful. It was definitely above his Ant Queen's world-scorching technique. At this moment, he wanted to escape, but it was too late. The Crimson Dragon's soul was like a sharp arrow that pierced through the night sky. The moment it collided with the blazing fire pillar, it instantly engulfed it. Immediately after, the Crimson Dragon's soul unleashed an earth-shattering divine might. Before the flames reached him, Gong Feiyu's aura had already dissipated. Under the illumination of the endless flames, Gong Feiyu's shocked face was instantly replaced by fear. At this moment, apart from fear, he also felt deep regret. He could not imagine how an existence that seemed like an ant to him could unleash such terrifying power. In the next moment, the huge dragon soared into the sky, and flames filled the sky. Gong Feiyu's clothes instantly turned into ashes. His skin cracked inch by inch, and streaks of blood covered his entire body. Boom! The Crimson Dragon's soul charged over like a mad bull, and Gong Feiyu's entire body was thrown into the air. The intense sun-flying ant let out a sharp cry in the air and instantly turned into a pile of black bones. The ninth prince of the Sun Chu Empire, the ninth genius on the Southern Mountain region's genius ranking, died tragically on the spot. Duanmu Lu and Duanmu Weiner stared blankly at the sky, unable to make a sound for a long time. Who? Nie Tian exhaled deeply, and the corners of his mouth curled into a faint smile. He sighed in his heart. The power of a second-rank star soul is indeed powerful. It can actually instantly kill a fifth-rank giant spirit expert. How impressive! However, at this moment, a cold gaze locked onto Nie Tian from afar. Heaven Luo City Lord Nie Tian, you do have some tricks up your sleeves. It seems like I need to take care of you. Among my peers, there aren't many who are worthy of me, Dongfang Du's care. In the forest 1,000 meters away from Nie Tian, a cold face revealed a cold smile.